All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Game Dev Show. We're here with Jason, Yorai, Andrew, and David, or Warped Imagination. David, who actually has something really cool to show off today. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I assume you're going to show that off today, right?
Maybe.
The cool, exciting thing that you showed me that blew up your room a minute ago?
Yeah, depends how many people like the video.
Okay. So if enough people like it, he'll have something cool to show off. And I think I already said everybody else's name, right? Andrew, did I say your name?
You did, and you said it correctly.
Well.
Yeah.
So before we get started, a couple quick announcements. Andrew has a new pack on sale that I have to share. I'm going to pop it up here on the other screen. In 1 second. Hold on, I just learned the hotkey. Windows key and the arrows, and then Windows key up arrow to make stuff pop up. So let me
Nobody can see it, though.
Share my. I know. I wanted to get it onto the screen before I popped it up. That was. Somebody showed me yesterday. I've already lost track. Anyway, yeah. So this hair, beard, and mustache pack. I thought it was hilarious just because I love having a beard. And you said you'd made a Yorai hairstyle.
Non-perfect. that was just the whenever Yorai, I don't see a side braid today, but sometimes I see a side braid, and it's a side braid hairstyle.
It's
right there. You go. It was hidden
in plain sight.
Hidden in plain sight. You're a ninja. But yeah, so we've got this hair pack. It's been in the works for a while. It needs a couple more updates, but folks on the Discord were asking if I could release it before making it perfect, and I have a tendency to be a little bit of a perfectionist, so I said fine, I'll release it. Most of it's perfectly fine. It's just some of the female hairs, the scalp shows through, and we need to update that, but we will. And all the others are perfectly great. And the combination of all these mustaches and beards together, I think there's something like 20 beards and maybe 12 or 14 mustaches. And then, of course, you can combine them together. And then another like 10 hairstyles. So there's a lot of combinations you can do there to get some really cool looks. And the second from the top on the left is the old man, which is a nice touch too. That one.
Yeah, these just work on your human characters, right? You just pop them onto the human and then randomize it or pick the one that you want, so you can allow people to do like character customization like you would see in a normal RPG.
Yep. They work on the humans, the elves, and the half orcs, and that big red beard in the middle. If you make the half orc, especially if you make it shorter and bulk up the blend shapes, it can easily be a dwarf. You can even, there's blend shapes for the nose, so if you want a dwarf with a bigger nose, you could get a passable dwarf out of this as well if you wanted to. So it works on all of the humanoids, and it works with the prefab and object manager. The video is actually a video for the prefab and object manager where I do showcase the hairs, but I made an update to that where basically it makes it a lot easier just to select whole groups of wardrobe and just add them with one click of a button into your character, and then you can just click buttons to turn them on and off, and that auto rigs them to the rig as well. And there's of course runtime capable as well, so you can just call it with a line of code as well.
You just go cut the hair or change out the hairstyle. That's pretty cool. And then it works with all the equipment and stuff too, right? So you can mix and match it all up.
Yeah, there will of course be clipping when the hair or the beard cuts through stuff. You'd have to use another asset. I think Impossible Creations, that wonderful publisher, has some assets that will add bones to things if you really wanted to. But yeah, otherwise everything just works very nicely together.
And there's something I've been noticing while digging at the files. If you go down and inspect the contents of this pack, which is there are no pre-baked colors here. This is all customizable, right?
I heard half of what you said.
I'm saying that the colors here are all customizable because the textures don't have a color to them, right? It's also done by a shader.
Yeah, so the textures could have a color, but there's a desaturate in the shader as well. So you can desaturate that, and then, yes, you can change the colors. There's a main color and a secondary color as well that you can kind of blend together, and that works pretty decently in most cases. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, by the way, to people who are interested in how you do hair color blending, usually is that every hair is done by like cards on the texture. and they're sorted by height. And what you can do is you can make a gradient from the bottom to the top of the texture, and you can set each part to a different color, and it will affect all the locks that are set on that model. So you can do a lot of really interesting hair stuff if you try to, say, for example, make a rainbow gradient over it.
That'd be interesting.
As long as you've got gray, I'm set, though. I always just look for whichever one looks gray, and I pick that. Like, I just want short gray hair so I can look old, like, for real. This is cool, though. I always remember seeing, like, artists working on these things at Sony and stuff, building these things out, and it'd be multiple months working of artists working to build out these hairstyles, and didn't end up with nearly as much. So it's cool that like this process is now something that people can just go buy. Pretty freaking neat.
It would be neat if Unity has eventually a standard human. Put me out of business, and so everyone can have the same human, and every publisher uses the same human. But it would have to have blend shapes and all that. So it'd be like MetaHuman, but it probably will never happen because.
Probably better to have just like a set of humans that you get with like Unity Pro. Like here are the human sets that you get with Unity Pro or something, like, and then these are like the default ones instead of a single one. There's gonna be some variation, but it'd be nice to have something that like people got, or maybe with the Plus or something, or even for free, wherever they did it. It'd be cool. So you've got these guys, and this is on sale for looks like 14 days, 13 days until
14 days, 13 more days, 2 weeks. It's also part of the RPG Character Complete bundle, so if anybody already has that, then it will show up as free. Essentially, okay. That's the big bundle. It's $360, so it's a pricey bundle, but it's got 13. I need to update the icon. It looks like 13 packs now because of the hair pack, and so certainly, if you already have that, that's like the everything you need to get started bundle, and generally it will include the humanoid accessories and stuff. So
nice. And it looks like the portraits. I didn't realize this one was out too. New portrait pack.
Yeah, well, I added the younger folks last week. It's really only adding a new 100 for now, but the AI algorithm I use got a little bit better. And now we can get realistic younger folks, and that's always been a request of people. So I figured let me spend a few hours figuring out how to manipulate the machine to do my bidding.
Yeah, I like having the portraits because I always end up taking these myself, and they look shitty with like green dots all over them because I'm not willing to spend any time actually making them good. So it's nice. Let's actually have these. While we're talking about sales, though, just to let everybody know, I also put links for the 2 sales that are going on the Unity store. There's the Blink sale where they've got a lot of their stuff 50% off. Like their biggest thing's the RPG Builder or the whole kit, but a bunch of art assets and different systems and stuff. And then there's also the if you go up here, it still looks like almost still looks like one big link. It's separated now. There's a line separation at least, but there's a mega bundle too. It's a separate link. I think if you scroll down, and I grabbed this. I don't know why it says buy it now. I already have it. But I grabbed this one earlier too. It's got some cool stuff in it. I mostly wanted the portal effects because I wanted to drop those into the background. I'll show you in a second. And the AoE magic abilities. I figured that those 2 alone were worth the cost, and then all the other stuff. Some of it I already had, and some of it was just cool extra stuff that I'll probably check out later. Pop that down. Dave, you had something to share too, right?
Yeah, it's a new game called RPG Barber, free.
RPG Barber.
You play as a barber and you cut hair. Unfortunately, I developed the whole thing, and then Andrew's released that pack, so he's kind of taking me out of business.
I had good inspiration.
I've been working on it for 2 years. It literally just released. It's terribly upsetting. No, I'm not creating any RPGs, so I won't be picking up that bundle. I did see the steps one in the bundle, which looked kind of neat, where it actually does the footfalls properly. So that was the only one I noticed in the bundle that was outside of the RPG stuff that I think was looking pretty good. I've never tried it, so if you get it and it's rubbish, don't blame me. Yeah, no, for me, just released a new video called Get a Good Handle with a custom editor tool in Unity. These titles are terrible. I've got to work on them.
They're very fun, though, once you do watch.
They're very fun. The thumbnails are fine, but the titles are just long-winded. And I had somebody comment that they weren't understanding what I was actually what the video was going to be about because the titles were quippy. Quippy, is that a word? Quippy.
Yeah.
I made them really long, so now they're instructional, and I leave the quippy thing or the cheesy stuff to the actual thumbnail itself. So this is just talking about using the editor tool class rather than the custom editor class. So the editor class, sorry, because a lot of people still build their handles and everything in their custom editor. So they derive from editor, they go on Scene GUI and they create their handles in there, which is perfectly fine, a reasonable way of doing it. But there's also this editor tool class, and this enables you to do things like have your manipulator tool show up on the little drop down that you see, the little hovering thing you see in the scene view on Unity. And it enables a few other quick little abilities, but I won't give too much away because people have to watch the video and then like and subscribe and do all that rubbish. But I just show you how to use it in a path tool, turn it on, turn it off, show the icon, put tooltips up, that sort of thing.
I'm pretty sure that if you make these editor tools, you can also give them a hotkey, right?
That's great. And I do that in here. It's a shortcut. So you can actually see there's a shortcut in here as well. Thank you, you're right. He's not scripted. I don't pay him, but he just...
Yeah, I was literally just asking because I took interest in that myself earlier.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you can add a shortcut key and that's in there as well. And I show you how, if you're using a QWERTY keyboard, you can set up the U, which isn't anything in Unity's default, to be whatever your custom tool is. So when you got it selected, you basically have this come up. So yeah, there's that ability in there. And then I've got another video coming up pretty shortly, which will be about a pixel display, because I've updated that. You can see it in the background now. I finally got around to working on it. I really didn't want to redo all the soldering and everything and build it properly and run the 3D printers and get them all cleaned up and blah, 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 all that stuff. But I finally got around to doing it. So it's all soldered. It's all set up. The frame is set up. It's all running in the background. It's got effects, it's got all sorts of wonderful little things going on. It freaks out every now and again because
nice.
That's what it does.
Nobody knows it's freaking out. They just think it's doing a really cool thing right now.
That's the dance party setting.
It's a really cool dance party setting, but luckily I have an off and on. But yeah, so that's running sort of. I already started freaking out today, so I guess I've shafted it for some reason. But yeah, so that'll be running during streams from now on. It's got some funky little modes on it. It's got story time, which is a timer that runs down from 60 for when somebody wants to tell a story.
At least it's 60 and not 30. It was originally 30. I can live at 60.
It defaults to 30, but it could go to 60. It can go to 90. But yeah, it can run in the background.
Jason, you fell for anchoring.
Yeah, it won't be run very often. But it can run in the background. It can run little effects, as you see here. It can run scrolling text if I want to just have my name up there running in the background. And it can run colors, so I could do a green screen if I want and have it lit in the background, and I can bring it forwards, and then it's a fully lit green screen rather than a cloth, which can suffer from shadows and all the rest. So yeah, it's up there. There's a video coming out this week on how that is developed in hardware, and it's got all the pain points that I went through, including the fact that I built the whole thing and then realized my 3D printer's not big enough to print the trim in one go, and I have a huge 3D printer. I have like a 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter 3D printer. The trim is just over that, so I had to basically print it in parts and put it together. So it goes through all that sort of process. It goes through if you want to do these projects yourself and put them up. So that'll be coming out. And then another video will come out on the Unity side of things, how I built the Unity app that runs this stuff and that you can see, etc.
Was that pretty easy to do, the code and controlling, like writing all the stuff to scroll the text across and everything? Was that, you find that to be the easiest part or the hardest, or what was the most difficult part too?
None of it, because I've done it all before.
Nothing was difficult?
The most difficult part was soldering. Like, if you think there's 32 lines, You have to solder every side of them, and there's 3 points on each side of each line. So there's 6 points for a line, and you have to do 32 of those. So the hardest point was doing all those, fitting it all into the case, and then realizing when you've squished it into the case that one of the lines come loose, and you have to take it all apart, find the point that you've buggered up, you've done a shitty solder on, resolder that, put it back together. That was the hardest
physical
part.
Connection. It was the hardest part.
Yeah, just because it was a pain in the arse. So that's the only thing. Because after you've been soldering that many points, you're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. So
that's why I went with those little clips, the clip connectors with the wires that were pre-done.
I wanted a really fine trim because I hate bezels. I really hate bezels. See that.
It would be impossible to do that, but
yeah. So I wanted hard soldering.
Yeah,
well, I don't mind. I would say if anybody's going to do it, is get a really good soldering station. Don't just buy a really cheap little shitty soldering iron off of whatever, because you want to get a really accurate temperature, etc., to be able to do this stuff. But as far as the board and everything's concerned, it's really not too hard to wire up a ESP32. It's very much like Arduino. It runs on Arduino code, and yeah.
There's a question. They're just normal solder joints, right? That you use.
Yeah, normal soldering.
Yeah, you just pop around. It's pretty simple to do, and you just use the standard LEDs. What are they? WS something 12. I've lost track of the numbers now.
1248 or something like that. Yeah, something around that. Again, it'll all be in the description of the video when it drops this Thursday. And I just scrap. I don't go into too much detail because loads of people have done this before. I just go into the basics because I want to get to the Unity side of things and show people how to connect these things up in Unity, how to send RGB over Wi-Fi, because of course this is a Wi-Fi connection, not actually USB connection like a lot of my other projects. And then I talk about that. And then I set it up with a little bit of IoT just to have it running. Because I've been trying to upgrade my IoT in my office. So I've got a Dyson fan in the corner, which I have to use a remote to turn on and off. And that was annoying me because I had to get a remote to turn it on and off. So I basically got a IR sender and then hooked that up to my IoT. And now I could just press a button on my keyboard.
Nice. Just start talking to it and tell the fan to turn on and off. That's always my favorite. I like to tell Google to do everything. And then it sends a message to Home Assistant that does whatever the thing is.
But I really wish I'd caught a video of me when I told Google to raise my desk, and then Google wouldn't hear me telling it to stop raising my desk. That's
that's one thing I don't have hooked up because I'm afraid that you can't. I'll pop this view over. You can't see them normally, but you can't even see them in this view now. There's shelves right over here to the right, and they'll all I'm always afraid that if my computer gets pushed 3 inches to the right, it's going to tear the entire shelf down when my desk goes up. So I definitely won't automate that one. That's the only one I won't automate.
People's desks are rising up.
They are. Unfortunately, this one's got a 400-pound lifting rating, so it can literally rip through stuff.
Mine's not that strong, but my shelves were installed by me, so they're not that strong either. They won't survive.
I've seen your DIY.
Yes.
I fear for your children.
Lots of good screws in that drywall, holding it in nice and tight. I got a couple studs, I think. I'm pretty sure I looked for studs when I put it up there. I don't remember, though. I usually get tired halfway through and then start half-assing my installs is the problem. So what's going on with you, Jason?
Nothing. You have my full attention. I am not playing games at all.
Didn't you have something new to show though?
Yeah, okay. I'm kind of playing on the Steam Deck. Yeah.
So how is it? It finally came, right?
It's great. It's everything I wanted it to be. Just to show I've done as you expect. It does have all the actual games, but I'm mostly using it as my emulation device. So I've got all my consoles set up.
Your $500 Game Boy.
Yeah,
so
but
does this replace your other? Does this replace your other emulator?
That was a temporary one. I didn't know how long this would take. It took 9 months to get here, so the other one was a stopgap always until this arrived anyway. But now that I have this, that's this is the winner. And so
this is the new de facto.
Ooh. Yeah, and it does the job. It's the games play nicely. I like it. It's good fun. Because it's all based on the same technologies. It's got the same operating system, the same menu systems, the same save files. So I can just migrate everything over, and it works exactly the same way, which is really cool.
Nice.
It does feel a little bit silly that predominantly I've been playing Atari and N64 games, but hey, like it does play, proper Steam games too. But I'll get to there eventually.
Eventually.
So have you tried any actual Steam games on there yet?
Yeah, I put on let's see, I think I had Doom. I tried a few others, and they work fine, but it's just so much space. I do have 256 gig micro SD as well as the internal. I got the largest one as well, but it's already nearly full on both of them. So I kind of when it comes to like a 70 gig game, I could put one of those on, or I could put every game ever made for like 9 consoles. So it's a bit of a trade-off, figure out what I want to go for.
It does make it difficult. There was a question in chat about your YouTube channel. I know you haven't done any videos recently. You said you're going to do some soon, though, right?
Yeah, I'm a couple of months. We're rounding up a couple of things of finishing up. Although I did work on a project today that is going to be the subject of probably not a YouTube video, but it's going to be free code I'm going to give to my Patreon, well, the Ko-fi members. I'm going to be doing a write-up on a particular project that I'm working on, and I think people get a kick out of it. It's like a breakdown of architecture and decoupling things. There was a few discussions in the Discord recently that I wanted to address directly, so I'm building a project that directly talks about the topics that we've been discussing on and off for the last week and a half. And so I thought that would be a nice, the people who are still hanging on Ko-fi, they'll get that and they can play with the code. And I think I'll keep it as a locked tier for Discord members.
Nice. Yeah, I've been watching that discussion. It seems interesting.
It repeats like every Tuesday.
That's why I want a project to point at and go, this is what I mean. Go look at that and leave me alone.
What's new with you? You all right?
Well, I had a rough week, and then on the weekend I decided why not read more on .NET code, because I got comfortable with dots, and I figured what's one more step? And I know that .NET code promised a lot in regards to the things that I always wish multiplayer integration in Unity would have. So I said, I'm going to learn everything about this, and then I'm going to hop in, make a multiplayer game, and there's going to be absolutely no issues whatsoever. That went well until a certain point. So with netcode, or rather any multiplayer integration in Unity, there's this one hack that everybody keeps iterating, no matter how I try to avoid it, is that as soon as you want to check how 2 clients interact with each other, you have to make a build. Or you have to duplicate your solution and then have 2 editors open and manually press play in both of them so that you can connect to each other and see what the differences are. This is a hack. It's not comfortable. It's wasting time. And there are other implementations that are way faster than that. In almost every programming project I've ever had to try, both with custom engines built on, say, XNA framework and Unreal Engine, where you just have a drop-down, say, 4 players, you press play, and immediately 4 windows show up already connected to each other. I wanted to have that in Unity. And I know that with Unity game objects, it's incredibly difficult to do because there's no proper isolation. You have the things in the scene, and there's nothing that will let you say this is one copy of the scene that is isolated from all the other copies you're about to make, so that you can have one for each client and then see the differences between them. Except with dots, there is an isolated world object, and that world has entities. And all these entities and anything they simulate is entirely isolated from all the other worlds that you can make infinite amounts of. So you can make a server world, 4 client worlds, connect them all via socket that just sends out bytes and receives them just like any other net connection, and have your fun of having multiple clients within one editor with no problems whatsoever. Except. So, .NET code is actually really well implemented, and I love what I've been reading so far about it, and I've been reading a lot. But there was one problem that irked me, and that was the .NET code has a nice play mode tools experimental thing, where you can set how many clients you want to have, and it will generate client worlds for you. And the system is made so everything works for that. And you can even make think lights that just talk about that they just send messages to a server, so you can stress test the server without having any actual really implemented clients with entire simulations. They don't even compress messages they receive. They just send out inputs. It's really good. It's really advanced. You can even simulate jitter and all that. But the hybrid renderer package, which Dots uses to render stuff, doesn't support multiple worlds yet. And I only found that out after 3 days of reading about netcode. It's a tiny note at the bottom of a page, somewhere in the documentation. And I only found it out after I asked Johnny, Turbo Makes Games, about this, because I couldn't find where they are discussing how you can switch the views. And he was like, you can't actually switch the views. I can't find a way to do that with the projects I have, which he has a netcode project, by the way. And I said, okay, I'll go look at the source. And by the way, because Dots is entirely packaged, you can literally open up the source and see how it works. So I looked at the hybrid renderer and I figured out what makes it tick. And I saw that there is no off button. You can't say this part doesn't render anymore for the time being. So anything that's going in is just going to stay there until the rendering is basically done, or it's not supported, in which case it doesn't even run code that it does need. There is no way to toggle it on or off aside recreating the entire system. But I did learn something else that was pretty interesting in that regard, which is with rendering in Unity, there are renderer batch groups. And apparently, when you want to render something, it makes one of these render batch groups. It adds them to a register of sorts. And then those rendered things don't go off until either the group is disposed or cleansed out. So it's not that every frame you send the commands all the time. You register them once and they stay there. So even if you disable the hybrid renderer systems in Dots, all your rendered things stay because you never removed these groups by disabling the system. It was a really interesting thing to figure out. I never knew they did that in Unity. So yeah, a trip down Dots lane.
So you relaxed by learning Dots. So it sounds like the Dots thing, the netcode part's actually pretty interesting, though. It's like
the netcode part is a dream to read through. I really wish the hybrid renderer was up to date to support what it needs, because with that one feature, they can sell Dots so much harder to everybody, because it's like the dream of making good multiplayer games in Unity quickly.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I wonder how they, because I know did they use that for that? What was that? The VR game that just came out. I've lost track of my names now. The one that just came out using Dots for their multiplayer server. It was all over BDC.
Yeah, I remember which one you're talking about. I don't remember.
Anybody in chat remember the name of it? Well, I wonder.
Yeah, it's sitting on my tongue though.
Because I know they only used it on the server side, but I wonder if the client side would have been an option with the hybrid renderer, or if they're kind of pushing that side. Was it V-Rising?
No, V-Rising.
No, that wasn't it. That's the other one. That's the vampire one. Yeah. Zenith. That's it.
Yeah.
Zenith one. Yeah.
It's kind of ironic because it's the name of the final weapon in Terraria, and I kept thinking about the weapon and not realizing why I'm thinking about it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Also, for people who didn't see it, the V-Rising devs talked about how they made the game, and they do actually use Dots, and they have their own multiplayer implementation, but they had 3 hours on Twitch where they showed how they developed the game, and they showed a lot of their systems, and they talked about how they used Dots to make everything way better. It was really interesting.
Do you have a link to that we can share in chat?
I don't think I do, but let me look, because I did keep notes. So
if you happen to find it, let me know. I would share that up. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Now, really quickly, I want to share my other screen. Get this up here. So you can see and pop in my hologram. So I set up the giveaway battler now. Can you see it through there or not? Okay, you can kind of see the particles. Trying to see if the particles show up on the wall there. I'm going to disable this little portal real quick. But I set up the battler for the giveaway now to run on the holograms behind me. You kind of see them. I'll switch this to be a smaller view in a minute. But if you want to enter to win, all you got to do is type in chat. But I added an extra requirement. You got to put an exclamation mark first. So I'm going to try it real quick. Crab Wizard, and see if I can join. And I should pop up and become a crab wizard, but I'm not sure it's going to work. Ah, look at that. It worked. Now I'm a crab wizard. So if you wanted to enter to win, I thought it'd be fun to just pop everybody up on the background in the holograms and do it that way. Have you guys seen this thing yet? Who here has actually played with this? Just Andrew? Oh, Dave, when did you play with one, Dave?
I played with it years ago.
Oh, okay.
Before they were Tilt 5, when they were the other company.
Oh, okay.
The other company.
Before it was cool, is that what you're saying?
Back in the old days. Yeah, it's super cool now. I've got a link for this thing down in chat if anybody wants to check it out. But essentially it works with this little headset, which I don't actually have plugged in right now. You can see it, like the streaming part works without it. There's no need for me to wear the headset while I'm on here. I'll look weird. But with the headset, you can actually see the holograms, look in there, and do cool stuff. And then with the controller, obviously, you reach in and control it. It's got like a little control or a button here, like trigger, so you can use it as a gun. The coolest things that I've found so far, or the most interesting ones, are the ones that really use like the depth of it, like going deep down there. Because right now I've got a flat plane, but if I made that a hole, like you could see down in there, and it looks like there's a deep hole. In fact, I think I'd probably like to do that and make it more like a Coliseum-y type thing. And those are the ones that look super cool because it looks like you can like look all the way down to the center of the earth if you were looking through there. If you wanted to, you look at it from top down. But yeah, I just thought it was neat. It's a fun little device to play with. I'm going to do a bunch of development on it this week, and I thought it would be really cool to just pop it up in the background. Oh, looks like Yori's got that link. Yep. And this was the Dots multiplayer link. Just drop that into chat as well. Let's,
yeah, so that was the V-Rising Made You for Unity stream, and they talked about how they made V-Rising. They've showed off their editor tools. They talked about dots, how they do their physics, which they customized the Unity physics package for, because they had a lot of static geometry, and they figured that they could use optimization towards that because they have the entire world basically sitting in simulation. They showed how they load subscenes and a lot of other stuff, and my video seems to be frozen.
I know. I can hear you.
Yeah, so it's really fun to see, unlike my frozen image.
Cool. So there were a couple topics I wanted to talk about today, if you guys are up for them. I think I dropped them into the chat. Oh, I wanted to talk briefly about the merger thing that was going on with Unity. Oh, and holograms. Oh, and hair and beards. Yeah. So I guess we've got most of them covered. So the merger thing. Have you guys been paying attention to that? I don't really understand how it's a merger when a big company and a small company. I assume it's something with the legal side and the money side. Dave might have a better understanding.
If it's all stocks, yeah.
If it's all stock, yeah. It doesn't have to all be stock. But if it's primarily stock, yeah, it's a merger.
Oh, okay. So it's the way the deal is mostly based around how the stock is done, not so much because I think people like see acquisition versus merger as like, merger seems like two companies that are the same joining up together, really, not as a bigger company and a smaller one. But it's more about the stock type stuff then.
It's a stock play, yeah. So if you think about it. You've got two companies, they both have stock and all the rest. One company joins the other one and they take their stock in their company. So company that's getting acquired or merged, that company has a load of stock. And then the other company goes, I'll give you all this stock for your stock. And then that just becomes part of the company. So that's a merger rather than another one where they go, I'm just going to buy you and take you, rip you apart, and put you into our company and do all sorts of horrible things to you. But yeah.
Okay. Oh, that explains it. I assume most people I had no idea.
But it's not an obvious thing.
Yeah, it's just really weird. Like that change in words was really confusing. That, and then there was also a little bit. I put up a poll on YouTube to see how people were feeling about it, and I know there was some drama with people about the company that it was merging with, largely on some malware stuff. And I don't know all of the details, but here I'll pop up the poll. But I seen some stuff about it, and it. From what I understood, have you guys seen anything about this yet? The Iron Source thing. There are at least like people on Twitter and stuff, and people complaining about them and malware stuff. But it sounded like when I was looking a little bit more into the details, they had some SDK that was an installer, basically like a generic installer that would let you do installs of whatever you want to install, and that people were using that as a installer to push in malware stuff. So it got blocked by Microsoft and then ends up, so I guess you like search for it, it pops up. But I don't really know the full details. But it seemed a lot less terrible than it sounded. Like everybody complaining about it, which is usually the case. So, I don't know. You guys seen anything about this?
I've seen a very limited scope of this. I try to keep my feed on technological stuff more than the state of the new stuff.
Yeah.
But my understanding is, as you said, there was a bundler for random things, and among them, it would have you install things like toolbars and all these other bloatwares. And that got to such a high degree of false necessity installs that some sites decided this is harmful.
Oh, and what do you guys feel about the whole acquisition or the whole merge thing? Like them getting the because it seems like the services are really around monetization and stuff. I don't know any details, but my guess is that they're trying to bring it in and maybe either I don't know if they're going to like replace their internal services or like add it to their services or somehow merge their stuff together. But it seemed like it was all kind of similar stuff that they had about user acquisition, monetization, and the kinds of things that like really big in the mobile side of stuff. Did you guys see anything about that?
I have nothing positive to say about this, and so I'm going to plead the fifth. Otherwise,
fair enough.
I'm going to say something I regret.
You're not American. You can't plead the fifth.
I'll choose to join Jason.
Okay, I'm Irish. I'll stay neutral. That's what we're good at.
That's good. That's good.
Where's the beer? So you can sip as everybody talks. I don't have a lot to say here, but I did look at the Unity post about this, and it basically guaranteed nothing. Half of it was disclaimers of, this might happen, we're talking about the future, nothing is certain, please don't make decisions based on this. And I'm like, okay, so it's basically a nothing post. When that merger happens, we'll see what actions they'll take with that. That said, I'm seeing a lot of people being really skeptical about just because you are working with someone who has a bad track record, automatically everything is going to go wrong. And I'd like people to think a bit more critically than that. Not that it's false to say that. If you're looking at statistics, obviously statistics not being in your favor is unappealing. But technology is sometimes unrelated to how people use that technology. And acquiring a business partner for their technology can mean good things depending on if you use it well. So it's really mostly what they'll gain and how they'll use it that counts, not who they work with, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with that insofar as honestly, all of my issues have nothing to do with this merger specifically or the company. To put it, try to be careful with my words here. My career in general is one where I often join a company and try to establish what the culture is, where things are going, how things are working, what the intent of the people are. And there's often a disconnect between what people want to do and what they are doing. And so the thing that I've kind of learned to be best at over my career has been trying to figure out intentions of people and their goals and how to align things best to work together. And so without specifically this particular merger or what it says, I have been trying to guess at Unity's intentions as a company for quite a while. And let's just say it's painting a picture about what their objectives are in relation to where they want to go and the community that is here and where they want to make their money from. And regardless, like this to me means nothing in the grand scheme of things relative to they've been on a particular track for probably about 2-3 years now, specifically publicly at least. And this is just more proof that the people who are doing the kinds of things I'm doing are not really in there. We were in the rearview mirror, I'll put it that way. And so I'm just looking at my options, that's all I'm saying.
So you're saying you're going to Godot?
XNA.
I can neither confirm nor deny. But
XNA is dead already. You can't even install it anymore.
I'm sure you can get him the installer.
No, you can manually drop in the files and do some weird registration stuff with the compiler, the visual. I forget it, the developer console to make it compile stuff. But I don't know if that's the full scope, and also some services are already dead. So your mileage may vary. Use FNA or Monogame if you do want to get into using frameworks instead of game engines, though there is a lot to learn that way.
Honestly, in this day and age, most of the stuff I do, I can probably pivot to just HTML5 canvases. We're getting to the point where WebAssembly is pretty bloody viable, to the point where we don't actually need dedicated engines for a lot of the stuff I'm doing. So
until
maybe,
you try
maybe
to
I
do
ditch
it,
engines
and then
altogether.
you start to run into like, why doesn't this fucking work?
True.
Like, I need particles. Yeah, I'm not worried about it at all. But I figure they're just it's another.
I don't think it's going to happen
trying to make money and probably relatively separate from the division that's doing engineering stuff and
yeah,
whatever.
I mean,
Just
Unity's been
they don't start charging me for it. I'm good.
Unity's been trying to do their monetization thing for a while. Like they've seen ad companies coming in and putting their ad software onto games post the Unity build and all the rest of it. They want to have a slice of that pie. So they've been trying to build an ad network for ages and an ad system and all the rest. It's gone a little bit like that. And they've bought another company that specializes in ads and monetization. There are some bad things to do with monetization. There are some good things to do with monetization. Where that goes from now, benefit the doubt, maybe. But yeah, it seems that way.
I remember having a very similar conversation when Facebook bought Oculus, and everyone's like, "Don't worry, it's just more money into it. It'll be great." Yeah. It's like, yeah, and there's me going, "No, I have a strong feeling this isn't going to be as positive as you think."
So they just got rid of the Facebook login, and now it's the Meta login.
Yeah. So that they kept their promise. You don't need a Facebook account to log in.
Yeah. Eventually, after going through, I have business calls with people to do with Facebook business every now and again, and they're just like they were ripping their hair out for the last 2-3 years trying to work with Facebook business with Oculus and all the rest. And they're like, they finally got into a sort of unhappy but stable state, and now they're like, great, we're gonna have to change all of that again to do this Meta login thing.
I had 2 weeks where I was bricked working on a client project that I couldn't make any progress on because I was still using a DevKit headset, and they had messed up their API in a new way. So you forcibly had to have a Facebook account to even use it. And so I had to manually upgrade the firmware on my device to support the new stuff. So my old headset, which was working fine for a very long time, suddenly stopped working. But then I still couldn't use it because even though the flag was set on the device as being a dev device, it didn't count because it wasn't set in the server based on the way it had connected, whatever. So I ended up having to go through this whole rigmarole of downloading the app on my phone, reconnecting the headset, upgrading the other firmware, doing a whole load of stuff just to get access back to the headset I had been using to do my job for the last 2 months. So yeah, it wasn't fun.
Yeah. You weren't alone in that. There were so many people that were just, as soon as they started doing all that, I started getting phone calls from people like, help, like this has all gone crazy. The Facebook Meta login, but we're getting off the point of the thing. But yeah. It's,
I guess that to kind of circle back a little bit, it's the thing that I find interesting, right? I don't. A lot of people begrudge companies for making decisions, but let's be honest, it's all about making money. And I've said this more than most. I think is if you want to make a hobby, do a hobby. If you want to have a career, have a career. And if anything, there's probably way too many people who treat game development like a hobby and not a career. They're pretending it's a career. They're putting as much time in it as a career and as much resources as a career, but then they're not actually engaging with doing the things that you need to do to make money to actually sustain it. So I don't begrudge a company pivoting in the direction that supposedly makes money and helps people move in a direction to make it more viable. My problem has always been with Unity, and is even more so now, that it feels like I talk about in my videos too, how I like to walk people from where they are to where they should go. It's not just about like giving them the resources, it's like moving a path, because we've all been there where you start out learning the beginner tutorials and everything, you're getting your hand held until you get out the front door, and then they go, off you go. And by the way, once you've got a game that's 2 years in development, we'll come back and help you then with our resources. It's like, no, but I know how to put a box in a scene. How do I get to like even a little bit further before you leave me alone and like expect me to go and spend 2 years making a game by myself? And so I've always felt like Unity as a community is a lot of people learning and like sharing information. But the engine itself always felt like the company just sort of lets you loose to do things. And my contrasting experience was back in the days of Flash and Tom Fulp and Newgrounds. And I remember my own very first experiences making games where it was the same thing. You open Google and you type, how do I make character jump? Back then it was ActionScript 2, but it's the same thing. You do your searches and whatever. And even then, same thing, it was community driven. Most of the tutorials I came across were from other people my age making tutorials in the form of techno music and Link and Mario sprites they've ripped doing little tutorial guides. And that's how I learned. But the thing that was different is Newgrounds as a platform had like a hosting thing that you could put your games on. You could download things from this company called Armor Games that would let you monetize your like small crappy projects really easily. You would just drop a thing in, press a button, and then you could put your game up. There was hosting services. I'm not saying Unity hasn't tried these things, but there was a sense of sort of you were being looked after in the days of working on Flash. There was this engagement with you and your community because their storefront was literally a front page of advertised material in Flash. It was about Flash. It was about games. And every time you go to the Unity front page, it's about services and for sale and things that the other things. And so that's how it's always been. And this isn't to say that's a bad thing, but I'm saying that philosophically, as a person in the engine, I've always had that problem where it's like, if there was more guidance to get people further along, you would have easier buy-in on the idea of treating it like a business. If you actually like guided people to the process of thinking it like a business, teaching them how to do project management, move your way up through it, give them drop-in resources for things like a fucking pause menu, which still doesn't exist as a default thing in years of Unity as an engine. These things were there in Flash. I could drop something in and I'd have a character controller, I'd have load screens, I'd have pause menus, I'd have achievement systems, all of this in a Flash game, in a single .fla file that was 2.4 megabytes, I could download and start my game, and I would already be more feature complete than downloading a whole pile of templates off the asset store. And that's what I miss. And that's what this looks like it's going further in the other direction, not towards what I want.
And they even implemented some of that stuff with the template system in Unity, where you could select a template, you go to a URP project, you go to an HDRP project, you go to a 2D platform project, and all the rest of it. They could add that stuff into it. I'm going to make a 2D platform game. Well, give me some 2D platform game stuff.
You can't even make your own template. Like, do you know, I did a Google search, try to figure that out. You have to take their one, unzip the bloody zip, and do a whole load of messing stuff to put it back in, and even then it doesn't work properly sometimes. It's like, you built a system for doing templates, and you can't even share a template between somebody else. Like, imagine how much more freeing if there was a storefront of templates where people could build a project template, put it up on the storefront, and not like an asset store. I mean like a project template, which has components that you pick, and you basically compose a starting point for a game. Like, there's so many things you could do that would kickstart the projects of people making things, you know?
And you're right.
Not even just games. Yeah,
not even just games. And you're right. You think about, I want to make an RPG game, so you go and get the RPG from the asset store, the surrounding for it that somebody else has worked on, and then so you've already started the project, you've already got the thing open. You might not have made the right selections on your settings before you start, and then you download this, and you get this big README file from the publisher of that asset saying, do this, do that, do this, just to set it up. Whereas if you had that template, and I was actually going to do a video on how to build a Unity template. Then I remembered how much of a ball ache it is and how annoying it is to break that zip open, do all those things, put it back together, build that little specification file or whatever it was with it, and then put it back in. And I was just like, I'm not going to do this because the amount of comments I'm going to get afterwards going, I'm not sure how I did this, and I want to do this. And I was like, I just don't need the support hassle of being that person that put that up. I completely agree with you.
complete side tangent, but whenever I hear about the feature not working perfectly right, sometimes I get the urge to try and figure out what actually makes the file tick and like open it up and start to reverse engineer what's actually going on in there. I just wanted to say that like it's not difficult to make templates without templates. It's just that it's more hasslesome to do so, because we already have the option to extract a Unity package from whatever we have already set up. It even lets us extract the project settings. So to a degree, you can make an entire feature template as a Unity package. The difference is you can't easily put it for others to consume on, say, the drop-down menu of the package manager, which is part of the primary problem. I wonder if you can take a package with project settings and put it on a Git URL so that people could pull that in, but I don't know how that package manager from Git works.
I literally tried to make my own package manager at one stage. I had a whole pile of stuff up in various sources. I was trying to pull it down, unzip it myself using like a gzip solution, putting it into the product. I went through a whole process of trying to build my own like installing platform thing just so I could build my own composed checkbox list of sub features and things. But the simple fact that you can't still have your own package which has a dependency on anything else other than what happens to be in the package manager makes all of that moot. You'd have to write your entire own packaging solution just to double check. Like here's a trick for you. You have stuff like Doozy UI and DoTween, and they kind of have this symbiotic relationship. Well, they did. They don't use Doozy. Doozy doesn't use DoTween anymore in the new version. But I went through the source code of both, and I decompiled both of them to see how they were talking to each other and how they were checking what versions. They're doing stuff like reading the assembly for the running directory, to find the folder directory, to search for asmdef files of the other asset to see if it exists, because there isn't even a define of like if DoTween installed or if Doozy, like you still can't even just do a simple compile flag to see if another asset is there, and let alone do the whole like add dependencies and checks and stuff. So someone like me who's trying to decouple things nicely, I literally can't even tell what's installed in the project. So like it's, package management as an entire thing. Like I was so close to just building my entire own package manager, and I just got to the point I was like, this isn't worth it. I'll just put a couple of zip files in my own directory and I'll like write a menu item that I can drop them in myself. I'm not going to build a tool for everybody else to solve this one problem that I have that's annoying me. So.
Yeah, I mean, even on my libraries, I have a little code that executes to put in a define statement and all the rest to say, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. So
I add global defines and stuff myself. Yeah, but you can't add it to other people's stuff, obviously. Like, so you still have to do your own checks. So
it's a pain. Yeah.
It reminds me of the fun hell of trying to figure out mod dependencies with Terraria, because people want mods to have cross-compatible features. So, for example, if mod A and mod B both balance something and they're both installed, they'll make specific adjustments so that they can work together. But now you have this problem where you want to figure out optionally, is that other mod installed? How do you do that? Because, we had our own file format for creating the mods, and it would basically become an assembly, and that would be loaded, but it's only at runtime. You can't actually search the files like you do in Unity, where it's all sectioned out specifically for the editor. So it got really, really complex. I don't even know how they do that in Team Loader these days, but in TAPI, the thing before that, it was absolutely nightmarish. There's the whole load order discrepancy too. Yeah, go ahead.
And to reply to Sky Shark, who was saying that he wants to see other people in here talking about other engines and talking about their problems. I sit in a group every week or so that has Godot people, Construct people, Unreal people, and all the rest coming in there. There are the similar sort of problems across the board in a lot of these things. Everybody has a niggle, or quite a few niggles with game engines that have been built by others to distribute and be able to cope with doing all sorts of games and cars and all the rest. There are. Yeah. This isn't just on Unity. These things are seen on other platforms as well. These are just very specific things that we really annoy us.
Yeah, because we use it obviously a lot. And actually, so to get a bit spicy, and even though I'm basically railing on Unity right now, I do want to make it very clear. Personally, people who are going, I'm going to drop engines and switch now, that is a pretty childish response. Because to be completely honest, if you're making a game for a hobby, you're perfect. It's fine. Change engines, play with something new. But I hope you realize a lot of us are making our livelihood from this engine. It's the thing we do. And it is not just I'll just change engine because I feel uncomfortable about some decisions. The truth is, as I've said, Unity as an engine hasn't been looking after the kind of work I do ever. I've never been in their milestone of what they do. Some features happen to coincide with what I do, other ones don't. What their goals are is irrelevant to my ability to earn a living. And I'm not going to change engines because of any external factors other than whether it's viable or sensible for me as a business. And the truth is, I've been using it for long enough that the idea of like letting an emotional decision completely derail and restart a lot of the like years of experience I have is comically insane to me. Like nobody is, if someone's 2 years into a game, they're like, well, I'm angry at Unity now, so I'm going to just shoot myself in the foot for 2 years worth of development. That's stupid. That's just, nobody's doing that unless you're already in, it's a hobby project and it's not, it doesn't, you don't have to account for the costs and development time for that. So that's not even I can rant comfortably and I can say I disagree with their decisions they're making, but that's no bearing on the fact that it's still a tool I use and I'll treat it like a tool and I will use it for the things I want to use it for. And it's irrelevant, whatever their business strategy is, unless they actually start monetizing in a way that negatively impacts me. That's it. That's the only thing that I'm going to change, whether or not I'll use the engine.
Yeah, I mean, if they turned around and said we had to have ads in everything we did and they were forced on it, yeah, that would make me change. But they're not. Even all this ad acquisition and this monetization and all the rest, it's not going to be forced on you because that just won't. That's just the worst business strategy. And they have things coming up in cars. Like they use the Unity engine in new electric cars. And you can imagine if you're driving along and suddenly you get an ad for the latest game that's come out or something like that, it's just not going to happen. You know, there are going to be limitations to what they can do with that. Yeah, as somebody just put, loot boxes very good. Can you imagine a loot box popping up when you're driving along on the freeway? Yeah, that's
you get 20 more minutes of brake usage. Congratulations.
Every fast food restaurant you go to, you actually just order the loot box. See what I get. Yeah, I'd like the Happy Meal loot box, please.
Yeah, the McDonald's interface run by Unity. That'd be brilliant.
Yep.
You know, I said I slept only 1 hour, but I'm already seeing I'm going to have nightmares when I go back to sleep. On that note, we mentioned that there are grudges with every engine. I just want to point out, engines are made to make applications, not necessarily your applications. So whatever you think you can make, it's not specifically about, is it entirely perfectly constructed for you? It's a package of code somebody else made that may have some features that you want. You are still responsible for making the features that you want that they don't have. They can't predict everything you'll want to ever make and include that in engine always available for you. They can try, it would be bloated as all hell, and you'll never be able to figure it out for any other project than the specific first one you ever thought of, because every project is very different.
Yeah, like I said before, like I do a lot of client work where they want to test how something looks. So I have an entire suite of generation tools. I have stuff that generates images, that generates faces, that generates fake user accounts, generates email addresses, that generates, like, you don't need that for 90% of game projects, but I have a huge pile of stuff for mocking up an application that's supposed to be a social platform or a scroll feed or things that I would need to demonstrate to a client when they're talking about mocking up an image. So other people might do mock-ups in Figma or something, but I can use Unity. It's very trivial for me to just call an API endpoint, fill some data and show it, and it's a much more compelling demo. So yeah, these are things I don't want Unity to go and make me an API for generating mock and fake data. That's insane. And it is entirely down to, yeah, there's certain objectives. My complaints with it are that idea that the philosophy they're going in means that they are less likely to make things that will help me in the future, or they're less likely to make things that align with what I think Unity should do in terms of games and how they structure education. It's not that it's like the end of the world or that it's changing anything for me or that they're not supporting what I'm doing. It's that the direction they're going is just moving further away from mine, which is just disappointing, I guess, for lack of a better word.
And on that note, the people who said that, well, you said it yourself as well, Jason, where dropping 2 years of experience going to another engine, I'm going to argue hard on this point, but it's just not a thing that happens. A lot of the engines have the exact same stuff, just implemented slightly differently. And once you understand the concepts, you can extrapolate way easier as soon as you read like one bit of information from that other engine. If you have somebody with 3 years of Unity experience and you drop them in Unreal, I can almost guarantee that they'll be able to make something that they thought would take them a month in Unity at the beginning in 1 week in Unreal after. Not because Unreal is better or anything, it's because they already learned all the concepts within Unity, and Unreal just has them slightly different. And it's really difficult to stress this point because a lot of people think, oh, it's C++ and Blueprint, scary. No, it's working almost the exact same. There's some fundamental differences, but if you're using visual scripting, it works the exact same way on both. If you're using rendering, there's the exact same concept in both. Nothing changes.
There's also stuff that's legitimately easier one side or the other. Like the way data tables and stuff work in Unreal is just a million times easier than managing data as a structured thing for some kinds of processes. But yeah, that's a whole aside. I will say though, to answer one question, because I guess people are curious. What do I do in Unity? And well, the thing is, like, I think I've mentioned this before too, that there's an infinite amount of careers out there that you've no idea exist. Like, for everything that exists, whether it's shoelaces or pumpkins, somebody somewhere is a king of a field of that area, and there's trade shows, there's magazines, there's a whole pile of community and stuff around things you'll never think about. And what I mean by that is there's airlines, and there's all the marketing and stuff you see around airlines, but then there's airplane sales. There's an entire field that you'll never see, which is companies that are selling airplanes because they're worth millions. They're very expensive products. And so that's a big market. And so there are entire podcasts about airlines and airplanes, and there's entire podcasts and there's events and conferences and trade shows around engines and around people, dealing with the different requirements for luggage and different, like, all of this stuff that you'll never see. And so that's one example of, there's one client we have where over the course of 6 years, we've made them AR trade show demos. We've made them touchscreen apps to control in-flight things that they want to do for settings. We've made marketing slideshows and trade things that they've done. We've made AR products on the table that show rotating versions of planes to compare them. We've done virtual tours. You put on a VR headset and you walk through it. And you can see the size and width of the different aisles because certain clients are going to be interested in the size of that relative. There's other ones which show you the customization options for seats and various different overhead bins. Like, there's other ones which are demonstrating the size and depth of the cockpit and how much space there is and the different new controls and panels. With, like, there was a Elite Motion demo where you could actually drive it and stuff. That's one client and a sea of projects which are all crazy that you'll never think about. There was another one where we worked on there was like underwater repair for like oil rig type equipment, which can be dangerous. And so if you're down there and you're like trying to repair it and two people are trying to communicate underwater about very important machinery deep underground, deep underwater, that's dangerous. So what they do is they had us make a Quest application where two people can sit in a submarine above the spot they're about to go to, stand in a virtual space that's the right size, teleport down to it and point at stuff and use voice chat to people to communicate what needs to be repaired. And then when they go down, they can fix it, and it saves a lot of time, money, resources, and possible danger. So that's two things. And I've done museum installations where there's those, if you ever go to a museum and there's one of those touchscreen panels and it's like, welcome to this point in history, and you can swipe through it and it does 3D flybys and it highlights different regions and like shows a skeleton changing over time. We've done stuff like that. We've done WebGL art installations where you can go through a virtual version of some museums where they'll actually have scans and 3D stuff done and they'll want to give people a virtual tour of it. Like, so many things. Unity is not, to me, a game engine. It is a rendering engine that does an infinite amount of things, from mobile phone applications to scanners. I did like a barcode scanner project once where I had to scan information and store it. And realistically, I could do that in any technology, but Unity is cross-platform. It means I could build it once and it would build on Apple and iOS, and they could put it on a tablet and they could put it on their desktop. So to me, giving a client this kind of a front end that I could write and talk about the stuff I talked before from an API perspective, the real application is in the cloud. The real application is a web API. 99% of the code lives up there, and that's where all the logic is. It's just a front end, and I could do the front end anything. I had a console version of it that was running for automation. I had a Unity version that was running on mobile phones, and then I had another Unity build, which was a desktop application that worked as a hub that could have poll rates and show statistics. Like, I could talk about this forever. Like, the point is, there's so much. There's like, it's not just some games and some other stuff. There's so many applications you don't think about, like bowling. If you're going bowling, those screens that show you the little stupid animations of the bowling pins and stuff, they can be made in Unity. Like so many things you don't think about are made in an engine that renders, and it can be any engine that renders. So that's what I'm saying when it's like, I don't really care because it's still a tool, and I'm not going to switch to Godot to learn to do all of like what it makes no sense to me. It's an engine, renders what I need, it does that, you know.
Yeah. Also, in regards to our rendering engine, even the rendering knowledge carries through. Somebody earlier, Erickson Cortez, asked, can I use what I learned from making Unity shaders to other engines or software? Not necessarily game dev engines or software. Thank you. So I just wanted to point that out because at the beginning I was like really excited to answer this question. So Unity and Unreal use HLSL, which is a high level shader language, which is just a concept for saying, here are some bits of numbers, of colors, or values in the world, or whatever have you, translate them, and then render them. And if you read all the internals, it's basically all the same in every single one of these engines. You're always going to end up with a shader that does these things, in games at least. But it's not just games. It's used everywhere. You can even do that on your browser. And all these fancy 3D modeling displays that you see in sites that have more than just flat planes, usually GLSL or HLSL. And it carries through. There's like almost no differences aside the language version itself, which languages evolve. They always do. Even C#, .NET, everything related to that keeps evolving. So that's the only thing that you'll always find changing. Aside that, it's just very engine-specific macros, which are convenience features, and that's it. So yes, all your knowledge can carry through.
And especially algorithms. That's something too, like, again, we have a difference of opinion on this, but I still think we're cross-talking about what we're specifically describing. I have no disagreements that most of the rendering stuff and the code stuff are almost identical in most cases. In fact, the biggest thing for learning games, the number one hardest thing or the most sort of complicated thing to get your head around for me is the core algorithms. Like how do you calculate looking at something? How do you calculate firing something? How do you, a classic one being, if I have lots of stuff in a giant world, how do I avoid iterating a loop through all of them? Do you understand octrees and dividing basically the general principles of dividing your world up and then processing it in small chunks is universal no matter what you're doing. And we discussed before the same kind of thing that graph theory and how that works is fundamentally the exact same thing, whether you're parsing a document in Word, the same algorithm is being ran to like calculate whether something should be bold or texted differently in a Word document when you highlight it versus calculating how to traverse an environment using a kind of decision tree versus calculating chess AI versus like there's so many things, and that's the one algorithm. It's just fundamentally applied differently because once you understand the basics between different kinds of sorting algorithms, different kind of searches, like the way Minecraft stores its environment is fundamentally the exact same thing as how you partition a lookup in a large database in a table or whatever. Like the technology is fundamentally the same algorithms, they're just applied differently. So I have no disagreements with any of that. 90% of that stuff will carry over. But like I said, to me, it could be just a difference of opinion on how we approach things, but I automate everything. Like I can keep my hands on my keyboard and I can do 99% of the stuff I do on my computer. I have shortcuts that open things. I have batch scripts that run automation scripts. I have various different folders that when something drops in a folder, another application auto takes that file, zips it, puts it somewhere else, does whatever. And a lot of this stuff has come from, I know how Unity works. I know how to automate around Unity, and I've gotten shortcuts and things that have worked for what I want to do. So when I say it's a transitional period for me, I'm not talking about learning the algorithms or doing the stuff. I'm saying that I am ground zeroing my workflow in that engine. I have to learn what my pain points are, how I want to automate those, write the automations for those, how to find the resources that I like going to, find the websites I use a lot for that stuff, know who to go to research and all this kind of stuff. So to me, that's way more important because that's the stuff you learn that nobody teaches you. There's no book that'll tell you, here's how you optimize the way you specifically write this loop, because it's 12 characters you write every time, but you can do 3 characters and autofill that using a live template, and over the span of 3 years that'll save you hours of your life, and if you do 50 of these you're saving days and weeks of your life. Those are the kinds of things that you have to learn painfully over years of working in something. And if you're starting me off in Godot, I'm doing all of that again, and that nothing translates. You're not going to be able to give me any of that back because all of the submenus aren't in the same place. All of the muscle memory isn't there. So that is what I mean when I say that it is a huge deal for me to risk changing engines, especially when I'm charging at an hourly rate and I'm being paid hourly and I want to get as much work done as possible, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, that changes even within Unity, because if you try to use dots now, you have to learn a bunch of new code specific things for dots. For example, what is an iJob entity? What is an iJob entity batch? Can you switch them out for each other? How do you write one of these? Do you need to make entity queries? How do you write an entity query? There's a lot of boilerplate code, and I've made like 20 live templates on Rider, so that I can write 3 to 5 characters and it autofills 30 to 50 lines of code for me, just so that I don't have to deal with the boilerplate. It's kind of amazing how IntelliSense tools can help on that regard, but you don't get any of that back. You're definitely right there. I did spend a good hour just trying to make these templates, and that's after understanding how to even write that code in the first place.
Plus, there's the stuff that, like, realistically, that you know, our good friend Mr. Warped Imagination here does in his videos. They're the kinds of things that, like, they're buried 12 levels deep in a documentation that you find one day while researching something else, and like every engine, they're not going to be surfaced. They're only going to be the thing you find at 4 a.m. when you're like, oh, that's a cool trick. I'll keep that in mind next time I'm doing this thing. So those kinds of videos are the kinds of stuff that you have to go and refine the people who've done that to give you the resources to these shortcuts and things. And if I was in a new engine, I don't know who the people are for that. And so there's those moments that are very hard to get back, you know.
Jason's absolutely right. You should all subscribe to Warped Imagination, every single one of you, to get all those bits.
And also check out
it's the greatest resource that's ever existed for niche Unity tutorials and details. If you want to learn the basics and get to intermediate, Jason Weimann's the best person that's ever lived as well. And then if you need assets, you of course go and see Andrew. And then when you want to learn how to be a big brain, you go onto Jason's Stories channel and you learn that. And then you just bug Uri every week to get him to make a YouTube channel.
Their powers combined.
Not happening.
He's gonna do it next week. Right, Uri?
Next week.
No, absolutely
I'm pretty sure
not.
he was on for next week.
He did say he was
Absolutely
going to
not.
make a big announcement next week.
No.
It was, wasn't it? It was that.
That's exactly what he said earlier.
Queuing up, stacking up a
Absolutely
bunch.
not. So,
One day.
I do want to point out, though, in the chat, a lot of people are asking if Unity is dying.
No,
No one can tell. But you shouldn't panic just because 1 or 2 or 3 bad things happen on the immediate. Because even Unreal had its own struggle. If you recall, just 1 year back, the entire fiasco with Google and Fortnite and Unreal Engine suddenly being taken off like anything Apple. They had to argue heavily just to keep developers able to use one of the biggest mobile platforms ever functionally. So every engine has its struggles. Don't forget.
I think Unreal does a very good job of producing demos that showcase really nice things, and it looks really nice. Unity, canned Kagaya, their latest demo. So Unity seems to not do a good job of making any demos. And
to be fair, though,
No.
Unity did the most realistic thing a game dev can ever do, which is waste a whole pile of time, make some fancy videos, and never release a product. So that's the most true and honest depiction of a game development studio process I've ever seen in my life. So,
yeah, they're just keeping it real, I guess. But I think Unreal always looks pretty, but it gives me a headache whenever I try to use it personally. Like it's different enough where I'm like, I don't want to even deal with this. And then
Andrew, they've got rid of the wet shaders now. It doesn't all look wet. It won't give you a headache anymore.
as long as it's still got the bloody motion blur by default, where everyone looks like they're strobing. Man, the amount of horror games out there, which is just pitch black with everything is shiny and wet, and everything is just blurred. It's like what am I even looking at? This is just it's like I don't know.
It used to be a case of you could spot an Unreal game. You go, oh, that's an Unreal game. Everything's wet. Sorry, Andrew.
Hey, everyone says you can spot the Unity game because it says made with Unity at the front. But, they ignores all the ones that don't say made with Unity that you don't think is Unity because it's not some crappy game that somebody made in 5 seconds. But
I actually said that this is one of those things. I think philosophically they made a big screw up with that. Unity gave themselves a scarlet letter, which is if you can't afford to remove the logo, you're stuck with the logo, which is purposely on bad projects. I said it from day one. They should have said you have to earn the right to put the Unity logo on your project. You don't get it at the start.
Reversed,
and yeah, exactly. That way, games that are good, that are come up with a nice splash screen that have a Unity logo would only be the ones that make it past that point where they've been signed off on by the engine and they are high quality and whatever advertised. That would have changed perspective on that a lot. It wouldn't make the two synonymous, which was a very bad decision.
The goal was probably more though just to get in front of all of the little developers, is my guess. Initially, that probably wasn't their thinking. Was more just like, we want this out there as much as possible so that everybody sees and hears that Unity is a thing and goes to search for it, try to make games in it. My guess. And then they made it so you can get rid of it, but you got to pay us too. But now I think you're right. I think that they have the opposite problem. They just switch it and make it. Maybe everybody knows that Unity exists already. Like make it only available in the cool projects going forward.
Yeah.
And also to your point, Andrew, regarding Unreal Engine being a pain to work with. One thing I've noticed as I got more used to using Unreal recently is that it's forcing you into healthy patterns for big teams, which is a very interesting asterisk. But it's specifically made to only allow you to work well for projects that will be long-term, so that you can't screw yourself up early. With Unity, everything goes, but also everything can break. With Unreal, it's not like that. From my own experience. And it's a lot of really small, nuanced things, but it piles up. And I think that might be part of the inconvenience.
Yeah.
That,
I'll tell you one thing. The best assets are on the Unity side, because most of my stuff is, all of my stuff is on the asset store, but not all of it's on the Unreal store yet. So there's that selling point. But yeah, I mean, I think in the end, you're definitely right. The made with Unity thing is silly. Somebody pointed out Blizzard made Hearthstone with Unity. Yes, they also used Playmaker for their art tools. It's not, I don't think it's part of the main build necessarily, but it's rather they used it to allow their artists to create stuff without bugging the developers, basically.
Which is super cool. It's a smart thing to do, to have some visual scripting in there for the artist to be able to do like those cool effects without having to write custom code all the time. Like the nice little bits. You probably saw in the GameDev Guild talk that Ashley did from Unity on visual scripting, showing kind of exactly that, just like taking these little tiny state machines and hooking them up. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought I want to explain why it's so fucking cool to do, and why I do the same shit for designers too, to give them access to things that I don't want, that aren't really impacting gameplay usually, but are visual and cool little stuff that I don't want to have to script, that they can just kind of tie into.
Yeah. In the end, Unity was a game engine that got big because of indies and hobbyists just being able to do it for free, where Unreal was not free. It was very expensive, and Unreal clearly realized, and now they are free as well. So that, that's just proof right there that Unity had the right strategy. Now, though, as we've been talking about, Unity is not just a game engine anymore, and in the end, there's money to be made from big enterprise stuff, and I think that's what we're seeing. Where we're, a lot of us, we're all here from the games world, thinking we're making games on that, but in the end, we're not wrong. We are, but Unity's doing a hell of a lot more beyond that. That goes way, way further than games. That has nothing to do with games even. And I think in 10 years' time, Unity, you can still make games with Unity, but Unity will be driving cars and fast food kiosks and who knows what else. So
I've made a kiosk in Unity.
I know a lot.
I've made quite a few myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest threat to Unity is probably something like Apple or Google coming out with their own similar capability stuff that's just more widely available or easier to use for people, or easier.
Honestly, I think this is one of those things too, where this is a much bigger conversation, but this is not people like us who are working in the engine for a living have reason to at least debate this on a moral quandary as to how it affects us and what we're going to do in our future. The truth is, if you're making a game, there is so many more things you should be worried about that have nothing to do with this. The main one being the prevalence of content creation with automation tools and the AI generation of things. Or my personal fear, if I was someone making an indie game these days, what would worry me more is now that AI and machine learning is getting so good, the delineating factor between indies and professionals is going to be compute power. It's how much resources you have to throw as much stuff at automation and AI and machine learning stuff as possible. Already, we've gotten to the stage that the cost of building large open worlds is relatively small for a large company, to the point that open world is like just a default now for a lot of games. And so the problem with doing that is the average indie who doesn't have those resources is now being expected to be on the same playing field. There was a movement for things like even for people who are playing games and have color blindness and that kind of thing, there's a movement to get those kinds of settings and options normalized by default by large companies, which makes a lot of sense. They have the resources to do it, and it should be an industry standard. But something that people aren't paying attention to is every time the needle is moved for big companies, that by default they have to have 4 versions of colorblind support, and they have to have various different kinds of generation stuff, and how everyone's using megascans and all this kind of stuff. It's setting the precedent that expectations from consumers is the bar is moving and the needle's moving higher. So you can worry about the state of engines, but what's much more worrying to me is if I was in that field desperately trying to make money in games, I'd be looking at the way consumers are engaging with games. And that's, in my opinion, it's changing. There was a huge shift when mobile came out, and fundamentally the way where you should put your energy if you're trying to make a living changed to move to mobile. It just did. That was just where the money was. But we're now at the point where if you go into games like most people do for passion to make a big game, they want to be part of the next Assassin's Creed, you're now in a situation where you are the chasm between your resources and the resources of another company. They were already huge, but they're just getting exponentially bigger, to the point where that's a much more worrying thing to me, is that either that's going to collapse as a bubble and we're going to go back to a very indie friendly thing, but I don't see that happening. I think it's just going to keep pushing the boundaries with more generation, more AI and more stuff, that it's going to be harder to compete at an indie level. That, I think, is a much more pressing concern.
There is the other coin flip side of that, though, which some companies decide that they're going to be selling the shovels instead of making the gold themselves by just providing you with all the tools for it. So, cloud computing,
that's what I do. I don't want to make a game. I want to help people make their stuff, because then I can make money and then they can make gambles all they like. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's a lot more to it than just the content. Obviously, the content carries you for hours and hours, but the system design is something that, compute power doesn't automatically give you. It will give you balance. It will give you interesting decisions that could align with metrics that you want, but the originality of games is still very much in the air until AI learns how to do that as well. I just wanted to be very clear here. There are things that are still pretty fair in the playing field. And
I'm not saying indies are going to die. I still think games like Outer Wilds is legitimately one of the best games ever made in the last X number of years, and that was a small Unity budgeted game more than anything else. That's definitely where the interest in innovation is. I just mean that on balance, the average game is getting bigger, and there's 2 categories now. There's a reason there's a whole pile of 2D side-scrolling games, because that's sort of the closest. You can apply just enough generation. You don't need to have an artist for every single part of it. You can have painted backdrops. There's a cost-benefit analysis on indies and how you build games, and you have to pick your camp. And the point is that it's leading to this sort of coagulation of certain kinds of games. Creativity it's expensive. There's I don't want to get into business as a whole separate thing, but a book I'm reading at the moment is Lean Startup, and it's talking about how do you innovate? How do you actually financially justify innovation? You can't just like play around until something good happens. It is a business. It's costing you money to play around. And so you have to figure out how to do it. And companies that are bigger and have resources are able to do that. Like, yes, creativity comes from people, but if you have a lot of people and you can pay them to do a lot of things and then run a lot of iterations and examples, you can fall down to creativity a lot easier than someone playing around in their basement, right? That's not saying that someone can't make a great game. I'm just saying it is harder to do these days.
Dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun.
Yeah, it's like, it's difficult to say that it will not pan out that way long term, I guess. I'm still
Just say, like,
thinking-
I think it's dystopian. Like, I disagree with all of that. The point is, my favorite games I've played in the last few years have been Disco Elysium, Outer Wilds, and Death's Door, all indies. I don't give a crap about any AAA title at the moment, and I'm completely disinterested. I'm not saying that that's a good thing or that's the way the industry should go. I'm saying it just seems to be where the attention is, and it's only small places like Double Fine that are still championing those sorts of like approachable indie games.
So you guys want to take this super chat real quick? I don't mean to change the topic too much, but it was here a while ago. I figured maybe we'd hit it and jump into a couple other things. Also, for everybody who's here live with us, if you haven't entered the giveaway, which most people haven't, you can see that I got a counter. Where is it? Right there. 27 people have signed up. All you got to do is put an exclamation mark and a race and class in the chat. There's a list in the chat or in the description, so you can see it and pick from there. Just put that in. It should pop right up on the board and be ready to win a 1-year JetBrains writer license or a $50 Cinti Studios gift card. So either one of those for the winner in the second place. So if you want to enter to win, that's all you got to do. Let me pop up the super chat real quick. And this is one that I think comes up a lot, but it was a super chat, so I figured I'll pop it up again. It says, how do I get more into the game development community when they live in Turkey right now where there aren't very many game dev events happening? And they love the show. So thanks for that. I guess thanks for the super chat. And my general recommendations, if you don't have access to just local in-person meetups, is to join some of the online ones. They're online meetups that happen relatively regularly for game dev stuff, or start your own, or join a mastermind group or set up one. I've got in my Discord server and working on putting people into mastermind groups, but I think that you could probably find something too. Find some online meetups and other things, or Discord servers. Jason Story's Discord server is really good. I recommend you go check that. If you look at the Ko-fi page down below, you can get a link to it. And there are always interesting discussions there. Lots of stuff going on. I got a Discord too. I'll drop a link down in chat. But will you guys have other recommendations for people that just don't live near any other game development resources? Yori, what's it like where you are? I don't know what the game development industry is like there. I'm so in my bubble of Southern California where it's like, which direction do you want to go to hit a studio?
Well, so I've looked into that a bit recently, and the predominant group seems to be a Facebook group for Israeli game developers trying to meet up in a city pretty close to me every Wednesday night, I think it was. And there are definitely a lot of events like hackathons and what have you, where people can just go and develop stuff together and make game-like projects as well in similar events. I don't engage with the Israeli community that much, but I am in a lot of communities online. One very fun event I had recently was your GameDev Guild, so that's something that people can hop on whenever that would happen again. There's also the Ukraine group from that was in your own GameDev Guild. It's having its own events now. I am mostly spending my time in Discords, and when I see interesting forum discussions, I try to join. You'll usually find people who are deep into the same kind of stuff that you're developing, and they might invite you into wherever they are, taking you on a journey to find more other developers to work with. Also, if you look up Reddit communities for specific development stuff, you'll always find a Discord server or two or free. And if you talk to other developers, they'll take you to their own cohorts of sorts. For example, every single one of the people here, except for myself, I think, has their own server in Discord right now. And each server specializes in different things. Yeah, okay, fair.
How can I do this? How can I point at Dave from two sides?
Yeah, so it's a thing that is spreading. We're the last ones, not having their own servers. But when you are in these communities, you'll get a lot more experience for the stuff that you're working on, because developing is an infinite field. And when people bring up topics of discussions that you haven't thought of, it expands your horizons there. And as you get better at this stuff and you're able to talk about it, people will start forming groups around you as well. So you end up being part of the community just by doing all these interactions.
Anybody else got thoughts on it? Dave?
Yeah, there's you could go to the game meetup group in Ankara. There's also one in Istanbul. And there's several others around Turkey. I know this because I just looked it up on meetup.com. Yeah, so there you go, meetup.com. Type it in.
Point.
There's
that's
loads
one of the
on
pages
there.
that I like to use for looking at meetups. That's where I post them too when I put them up. Put them on meetup.com. So make sure you're searching there if you haven't seen it. I guess I didn't even think about the fact that not everybody has probably seen or heard of the page. Right? You can find meetups.
I check it every 5 months or so, and yeah, there's 3 remotely interesting meetups in all of Ireland that I can see to do with anything programmery / games or whatever. So it's very slim picking for me over here, unfortunately.
The other option is move to LA. There's loads here. You literally
who needs money anyway?
Too
too
many here.
You to meet up every day, right?
I at one point I was like, right, I'm gonna go, and because my business partner was like, sign up to every meetup group. We'll go to all these meetup groups around LA to do with tech and all the rest to advertise one of the companies we run. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then I turned it off because I was like, oh my god, I'm getting like 15 meetups a day because LA is just batshit as far as that's concerned.
Expos and conferences for everything.
Everything. So yeah, move to LA.
And there's also go. Okay, so there's also online meetups in voice chat, which is a great way to make yourself part of a community really, really quickly. When you're in text, it's hard to make sure that people understand your emotions as you speak, your enthusiasm, etc. And enthusiasm is infectious. So when you get to speak in voice, it usually will let you carry through and have some more friends that you can talk about in those Discord servers or whatever have you more consistently. Weimann, you also had a group online that meets up every week, right?
Yeah, there's a group, and I think what I'm going to do sometime, either this month or next month, probably this month, is set up an online, like a monthly meetup in Gather, or do like a GameDev meetup for an hour or two once a month. And just bring in speakers to talk about little things, just like in a real in-person meetup. Maybe have like 2 people talk about something each for 20 minutes or something, and then some open discussion. So I think that something like that could be a lot of fun, and in Gather it makes it more fun. So, so if people are interested in that, let me know too. And if a lot of people are interested, I'll rush on it and do it faster than if nobody says anything. Then I'll probably forget about it and do it again next time I remember.
My advice is going to be a bit more cynical and clinical, because it's what happens when you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't have a lot of resources. To tell the truth, people get into games or some version of it because they're passionate about making stuff and they're excited at the idea. And so as a baseline, almost a given, almost every single person you meet in a gaming meetup or community or online thing has something they want to make. So everybody is already, quite frankly, selfishly looking for their thing to happen. That's what everyone is doing. Now, that doesn't have to drive your decision making. You can be more open-minded, helping other people and working on their stuff. But The problem is that leads to a whole lot of people with buckets full of enthusiasm and nothing else. And that leads to communities that tend to be very high energy, but result in nothing. A lot of conversations, a lot of wasted hours, and a lot of people that do nothing with it. Now, if you're looking to find people and meet up, there's a million communities you can join to do that, and that's fine. But my personal biggest gripe with the games community and everything else is the fact that people, again, they don't treat it, they pretend they're doing a business and they're going to make money, and they spend all this time sitting around having fun and talking and playing. And the truth of the matter is, that's fine if that's what you want to do, but if you are trying to get into the games industry, quote unquote, you have to be more pragmatic with your decisions. And so the way to do that is people want to work with people who help them, not people who are asking for help. So if you want to start getting deeper into this and start working on more things, very easy thing to do is just join a load of communities and go stealth. Just watch, just hang out in communities. Look at the showcase channels where people are posting things they're working on, and just watch what they're making. And as they're making stuff, do some research. Look into how to do things, or like how to do various shader stuff or whatever else. And then DM people. Just directly go, hey, you're making this project. I noticed you're doing this. Here's something that might help you. And just start helping people and start engaging with them. And you're basically becoming useful. And that is how you start to engage with people. You start to do that clinically, choosing people who are actually going to do things. And that's the thing. You don't help everybody, because everybody wants help and they'll drain your energy. What you want to do is find the people who are making weekly progress on their projects in the showcase channels, help them, and they're going to get better along. They'll want your help. And the further they go, the more help they'll need, the more they'll want to work with you. And so if you've got 10 people who are all working on things and you are there contributing to their stuff, you'll be dragged with the current as they start making progress in their work. So if the truth is, if you want to genuinely make progress, you have to find people who are self-motivated, who are actually making things and not pretending to be making things, and try to get in on their projects and work with them and find a way to start getting your name in and on useful projects. So that may be a bit cynical, but the truth of the matter is, you can have fun for a few years. I did it for about 15, but there hits a point where after hanging around in the same communities for 15 years with the same people making their game, you have to just bite the bullet and tell yourself, what am I doing with my time? How am I going to spend this effectively? Do I actually want to do this for a living, or am I just going to be a hobbyist for another 20 years? You know?
There's another point, and that's making imaginary friends. Imaginary friends really help you get through things. But make them speak English if you don't have another language. My one speaks Spanish and I can't speak Spanish. So it's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
But
You gotta translate.
Google Translate doesn't work because when they speak, only I can hear it. So
Hey, I just wrote some code recently that lets them talk back to you. So you can do that. It's like you can just type in words and have have them speak to you.
I love that. Anonymous, warped imaginary friends. Yeah. That's right.
Dave, did you have any
making that game
on meetups for LA? There was a question about that. There's a big LA Unity one, right?
COVID hit and everything kind of closed down a little bit, and not everybody's got up and running. The problem is a lot of them use like free spaces from like shared office spaces and stuff like that, and none of them are opening up to having free groups turning up into those areas now. So the LA Unity group's been a bit quiet recently. Same with all the VR groups. There's an XR LA, there's a VR LA group as well. And then if you want to go wider afield, just look to the counties that surround, well, the cities and stuff that surround LA, and you'll find some there potentially closer to where you are. If you're in northern LA, then you have to look up. If you're in southern LA, look down. If you're in northern LA, don't bother looking down. You'll never make it because of the traffic.
Yeah, LA is huge. It's easy to get lost. So, let's see. There's a ton of questions in here that have popped up. While I dig through and find the questions, if you haven't entered the giveaway, it looks like 55 of you have. Hit the thumbs up button and then put in an exclamation mark and a race and class, and you can you'll be entered to win a JetBrains Writer license. It's a 1-year license, or the $50 Cinti card. So first place winner can pick. Jason, you had a question that you popped up in chat, but I am blind to trying to find it. It must be up here a lot because there's a lot of stuff going on here. Can I find it? I don't think so.
Basically it was just the question of all the courses and tutorials are focused on game dev. Where do you learn the non-game dev stuff in Unity that I talked about earlier? The truth is, you don't. Like, as I've said earlier, Unity is a rendering engine, and you do need to learn Unity. And if you learn how to draw a sprite and how to draw a UI, you'll still be able to draw a UI if you need it for a non-game project. The things that turn it into a non-game project are learning, communicating with API, and how to access the file system, and how to, how to do logins and bearer tokens, and how to. The truth is, you have to learn the other things. That's how you do the things that are the other things. And the easiest way to do that, as I've said it a million times, is Pluralsight. Go to Pluralsight and just live there for 4 years. That's what I did. I just watched every video they possibly had with C# in the title, and I slowly increased it from watching at 1x to 2x to 3x to now about 3.5. And there's a lot of information there. Anything from AWS to Azure to web services to how to write your own backend stuff to design patterns to, defensive programming to whatever you want to learn. There is hundreds of hours of courses there that are enterprise level things for like building whatever it is you want. Yeah, Dick Chap's videos are great as well. He would fit perfectly alongside Pluralsight's content. It's that level of quality. I actually bought his course on unit testing. It's very good as well. So yeah, find those kinds of resources. Forget about games and engines. Not like in totally, but like if you're trying to learn this stuff, just learn it. Just learn C#. Learn application development. Hell, go and learn MVVM. Learn how to build a application using the new WinUI frameworks or something, because that'll teach you how to draw boundary lines and how to do all of that stuff. And then you can decide to take what works back into Unity for other things.
And I just want to give a small asterisk here. You can learn all these things in Unity. The thing is, it's very prone to being unified or unitified to a degree, which is a way where you code, but Unity wants you to do things a certain way. So you start malforming your code just to fit into Unity's standards. But even games, if you strip out all the fun, fancy, imaginary content of this is a hero and there is an enemy and this is a weapon that deals 5 damage, you are constructing systems consistently not related to games. The only way they become a game is by you deciding that it's an imaginary content made for entertainment. And for example, if we just take Terraria, if you strip out everything else, we still have a localization system, a file loading system, something that tracks all your information as you use the application, so to speak. To be precise, it's the character saves and the world saves. We don't actually have any other metrics side achievements. There is a lot there that you use. You even consume APIs like Steam, so you can download files, upload files for persistence and sharing information and connecting to other clients, etc. These are all things not related to games. Your apps will do this regardless. It's just the theme you put on top of it that is the game.
Yeah, and you don't even have to go outside of the stuff you learn for games to do the enterprise thing. You don't have to learn all the other bits and pieces to start off with. Use that lean startup methodology that Jason was talking about a minute ago. When we done stuff for the music festivals across the US, we done Lollapalooza, Austin City Limits, all the rest of it. We built a big 4-sided tower that had great graphics on it, augmented reality and all the rest. To sell the idea of that, we didn't have anything externally. We just use Unity, pumped out the 4 displays, put cool graphics on it, put stuff in for the social engagement and all the rest, just faked it in there to start off with to show that it worked. And then we proved our point, made the sale. Then we got somebody in that specialized in the databases and plugging the stuff across and provided an API. And then us as the Unity developers just used that. We just basically called that API. I hired somebody in with the experience on the other side. I didn't learn it myself. I just hired that person in to create CMS and all the rest. And then I hooked up to that. And that's how we plugged it out. That's how we did it for this. That's how we did it for the Super Bowl. That's how we did it for all those sort of big shows. We built it in Unity without anything else but the game engine and our own talents. And then hired in other people to do the back end stuff.
They're just pulling it up so everybody can see too, because it looks really cool. You see the tables, the things in actual, like, the real scale.
Yeah, that was a 4-sided tile we put up in Lollapalooza, and everybody gets drunk. It's so much fun. I did not go. I'm not into festivals or anything like that. But the same thing for the Super Bowl and all the rest of those big NFL games.
Also, if you look at that, there's one very big thing that a lot of people distinguish games and non-games with, which is motion graphics. And there's really no point to make the distinction with that. But just know that if you can consume some motion graphics into your application, it's going to be way more exciting and it works for everybody.
All right, so do you guys want to take a couple more questions? There's a few in here we could probably hit, or we could jump into discussions about whatever you guys want. But I figured maybe we answer a few of these, unless you guys got something.
So you did want to bring up the code review. Do you want to do that today? Keep it for later?
I think we would probably do the code review next week, just because I don't think everybody's had a chance to go through it. But I did want to just briefly. Do you want to talk about it a little bit first?
Yeah, sure. So I just want to preface, this is pretty short. I only saw 3 files from you, and they were pretty clean and clear. So I don't see a reason that we can't just go through it live. But it's up to everybody's call here. It was basically a character, health controller, damage controller, and a player, and the controllers would basically do some presentation and state management, and the player would facilitate doing some interactions in a 2D world as a platformer game, taking damage, dealing damage, and not dealing them, taking damage and passing the level, essentially. And there were a few methods, as all Unity scripts have, and some dependencies. And these dependencies might have some things that we opt to discuss, along with some coding principles, standards, etc. Like, the general code critique.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think let's so the only one person sent code in to review. So if you're watching, you know who you are. I think it'd be good if we just do it next week when Dave's going to be here too the whole time, right? So we can get a bunch of stuff and kind of prepare a little bit. But I'm excited to do it. And if anybody's got a second code project to review that's about the same, maybe we could send that to and we do 2 of them. Just do them kind of like back to back and do a comparison and get some variety in there. Does that work for you guys?
Sure.
And if anybody in chat's got a thing that you'd like us to review, we were looking for code, ideally a smaller segment, a small snippet of what it is you're working on that you've got questions about, curious about the architecture, the design, or other things, so we can kind of address those things. Not so much like a little bug or something, but you worry about the bigger architectural and design parts. Dave, you've got to run though, right?
Yep. My wife has booked me for the rest of the day. So
she's able to do that? Just book you out for a whole day?
She put me out for a whole weekend last weekend. I was up in Big Bear kayaking. So and kayaking in the real world, not the virtual world. Whenever I say to somebody I'm going kayaking or rock climbing or something like that, they're like, "Oh, how do you do that in VR?" And I'm like, no. Physical world. There is a world out there outside of VR and all the rest.
You gotta wear your headset while you're up on the rocks, right?
Oh, there is somebody that's done that. That actually has a headset and you can climb up the rocks and be on a mountainside. And they do it on one of these, those fake walls.
Yeah, the rock walls.
Actually have it. Yeah, you go up the fake rock wall, but you look down and you're actually on a cliffside doing it in an environment.
That would be kind of neat. You get a similar experience without spending years and a bunch of money and all that other stuff and being stuck on the top of a mountain when you're done.
Yeah, just don't drop your hands thinking that you're safe once you're actually in the real world. Falling off a cliff is not fun.
Yeah, hands are important in the real world.
Yeah. Also, whenever you go, do you just put that display behind you on a please hold loop?
Whenever I leave, no, because it will freak out at some point and I won't be here to see it.
It's just a dance party without you. It's inviting all your friends.
When I leave, my imaginary friends are still here. But yeah, I have got to shoot. So it was great being here, guys, and I will speak to you next time.
Yeah.
All right, it's good seeing you, Dave. See you soon. And he's gone.
Yeah.
All right.
Also check his coffee.
Yeah. So let's see. Let's pop a couple more questions. This one somebody asked, and I was just curious if anybody knows the answer. But can you just drop a WebGL project into WordPress or have it as a WordPress plugin? I know that you can just drop like a link and embed.
Yeah, just do an iframe. You don't need a plugin. Just literally put an iframe in a tag.
That's what I was thinking. You just drop it in there, right?
I've literally embedded a WebGL project in a full screen Obsidian single tab. I literally just wrote the single iframe and it just comes up as a full, like you don't need anything else.
Yeah. So
is it about the file content distribution or?
What was that?
No. Is it about the content distribution maybe? I don't know if WordPress lets you just...
No, you can do whatever. I've embedded tons of stuff in WordPress projects.
Yeah, I think the best way is just do it with an iframe instead of using a plugin specifically. Just drop an iframe in there and put it in there, and it tends to work. But here's a question on designing stuff. I think it's kind of interesting. When you're ready to make games and you want to build a team, do you prefer to have a full game idea, like a whole design, or do you want to come up with that with the team of collaborators? And I think that this depends a lot on how much you're paying them. Right. Anybody want to jump in on it though?
It's a loaded question in some way, because
in multiple ways.
Yeah. So first of all, I have an idea. I'm going to hire people to build my idea. Great. It's your idea. They're going to do your bidding. Now, it's great if you can work with them and take their ideas. That's a very team player thing, and they'll probably make your idea better because all of our ideas are probably not as good as they could be if other people came in and gave us some tips. A lot of the big studios, though, they don't do any of that. What they do is say what's going to make us the most money. And I think going back to the Unity acquisition, that's kind of what that company does, is say early in the process, will this project that you're thinking of making make you the most money? And if the answer is no, they don't make it. It doesn't matter who wants to make it, whose idea it is or anything. Their job is to make money. So there's this whole spectrum from I want to make a game, this is my idea, to we're a business, we just make things that make us money. We don't care if we like it. If it makes us money and we don't like it, great, makes us money.
Yeah, this is a business question more so than it's anything else. Like, there's a concept called validated learning, and it basically means that anything you ever want to do, you can just keep trudging along until something happens, or you have a lot of assumptions. One of the biggest assumptions that everyone has in any new project is people will buy this. If it's good, people will buy it. And so you're already presupposing it will be good and people will buy it. And so validated learning is saying, well, why would we waste 2 years and all the money to get to the point where we're just figuring out the answer? We could literally make the best product that's exactly as we envision it, but the people may not want the thing that we envision. So before you start thinking about ready to make games and building a team and all this stuff, what you really need to do is find your audience. So figure out who you're buying it, make your thing, and then put that in. So the idea is 100% right. It can go one of two ways. You can build a team by saying, I have a project, come work on my project. And people will laugh you out of the room and go, why would I work on your project when I could work on my project? What the hell are you offering me? If you're paying them, different story. That's what Andrew's saying. But the opposite's also true, is if you really want to get something done, having your friends around to come up with ideas isn't making a game, it's starting a podcast. That's basically a whole bunch of people who will sit around, have a load of fun, and we call it the let's open a bar problem, where everyone sits around and goes, that'd be so cool. Oh, lasers, wouldn't it be great? We could do all this stuff. And it's like, cool, and 5 hours goes away, and we're like, we'll start tomorrow. Yeah, and then tomorrow it's like, yeah, let's do more stuff. And then 5 weeks go by, and you've had a lot of really fun conversations about a game you'll never make. So, practically speaking, both are wrong. What you need to do is figure out what you want to make a proof of concept, test it, have someone play it, get the feedback, iterate, do that. And when you look at it and go, oh shit, people actually like this. Now, how much time and money we're going to put in to build it. Now, it's worth going to people and saying, look, play it. It's fun. Needs to be more fun. I need your resources. Now, you don't have to sell them on a hypothetical idea. You've got a proof of concept. They'll buy in. And so you either get people that work and will want to be part of the project, or you'll pay them to work on it. Like, again, this is a big difference between, are you doing a hobby or are you doing a job? Figure it out and apply as much resources in as appropriate. If it's, how do I build a team to have fun? Start a game jam. Get 5 friends together, set yourself a time box thing, and make a game jam. That's the closest you'll get without all the money and without all the resources. You should just do a small sorting thing for like testing that you're able to work together as a team and you're able to actually get something done. Do that. But if it's actually a real project, then you can't go to someone with an idea. You have to go to them with a validated thing, with KPIs, key performance indicators, that it's going to succeed.
For my own take here, although Jason and Andrew said the perfect things to say, if you are just starting out, as Jason mentioned, if you're just coming to somebody else and you're saying, I have an idea, please work with me on my idea, they have no incentive to do it unless it's somehow incentivized externally by usually means of compensation, which is not necessarily something that drives people. If you find somebody that's passionate about your project, fantastic. Usually it's not that magical, not something that happens. You can decide to warp your idea a bit towards what they like, and maybe they'll find it more agreeable to work together. There is a thing called revenue sharing where 2 developers can get together, make a project. The project comes out, it makes revenue, they share it. But for them to want to work an amount of time significant enough to make a product, they need to have something to keep them going. And that something is usually their ideas being carried through. Now, regarding the bar talk about how everybody puts out their ideas and they're having all that fun, you make me feel very guilty, because that feels exactly like the Terraria model, where every time everybody has a fun idea, we somehow end up making it. So it's, instead of just talking about it, it gets carried through, and that seems to work.
It's because you're all getting paid.
Not necessarily always. Like, people will make things even out of work hours. People will just whip up Terraria and make whatever they feel like would be fun, present it to the others, and if they like it, it gets kept in to a degree. There's a lot of stuff that gets made over weekends with nobody's oversight until it's presented. So there you go.
Yeah, we generally call that either ownership or buy-in. Yeah, the idea being that people want to work on things that they feel like they own. And so that's a really good business management strategy, is rather than like handing down orders on high, genuinely divide your team up and say, you own the music. That's your thing. You get to make the decisions on it and let them drive that decision making. And that way you can still have meetings and groups about deciding what to do, but by giving somebody something to have pride in, they're more likely to buy into the full experience of what you're doing. And that's also how you get employees to actually work at home, because they want to show something cooler than they had yesterday. So it's a sneaky trick that if you get people to feel like they own part of the project, you'll get free hours out of them. Just generally, it's a good strategy.
It's not just about the pride and accomplishment of doing what you like. It's also the agency, because people don't like being just a content producing machine. They want to show off their personality, they want to be able to have the decision. They want to feel like they have control over whatever they're working on. So when you're just asking them to deliver something very specific, they can do it, but they don't necessarily have their personality in there. They don't have themselves in it. Therefore, they might not enjoy it as much. They can treat it as a business transaction, but there's nothing in it for them. If you give them the leeway, well, you can probably get something a bit more readily available because of the motivation, but it may not be entirely to your specification. Sometimes you'll be surprised for a good part, though, because people who have passion to make something will try to make sure it's the best it can be, except genie wishing exactly what you said you want, which is also an entire thing with conversing with teams about what you actually need versus what you want.
The thing is, though, your team has kind of earned that, because the truth is, it's, if you keep coming up with ideas week after week and delivering nothing, that's just a recipe for demotivating and everybody hating the project and not wanting to work on it. You can have all of that freewheeling, creative, personal, whatever, if you're delivering. And the truth of the matter is, most people aren't. Most games in the world being developed right now are in a constant state of limbo that are never being pushed forward. And so I think while I agree it's possible to do it that way, I think philosophically at a very root level, more people are failing at this than not. And so the number one thing you should do is not work in that direction, but genuinely focus on put one foot in front of the other. Just add a thing, test it, move on. And people need to treat it, again, like it may be a game to the consumer, but it shouldn't be a game to you. It should be a business to you that ends up in a game. And you can sit back and you can enjoy it. And if you have 5 people on your team, some people can take on the business side and the others can get to enjoy living in the creative level design world of it all. But at the end of the day, somebody somewhere in the pipeline of that project needs to give a damn how much time and resources is being spent and how likely it is to be delivered. And that's the thing that's missing from most projects.
I'd like to asterisk what you said, which is it shouldn't be a game for you, it should be a business. I don't feel that way, but I do want to explain why. It should feel like a game to you. It should be a product for entertainment, and that entertainment should be as much as possible. With the critique you have as a consumer of your own product, you should be able to assert that it doesn't suck. And if anything sucks, kill it off. You don't want that. This is your business side. So business side is important, but not just. You do need to be able to assert what you actually make.
Again, I don't disagree, but like nobody has that problem. It's like you need to have more passion in the game you're working on. Like, of course, that's why you're making a game, because you have passion. So that's not something that
you can see people.
That
I've met people who work in games and don't necessarily have passion for it. They just had the technical ability and they got hired in and they're doing what they're told. And sometimes they'll have their fun.
They're not the people, but those people aren't going to be like, you should enjoy the job you went into for money. Like they're not going to, right? So it's if you're talking about acting change.
Yeah, but I'm saying if
people, you know?
Yeah, but if you have these kinds of people, and I'm not saying they're problematic by any degree, they can be fantastic people, they can be working exactly as you tell them to. But if they cannot assert what isn't perfect about the experience they're giving, then you need to have somebody in there with them to be able to provide that for them. Ideally, if you're making a product for entertainment. Because if there's a part that's not entertaining and nobody's catching it off, huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, and again, we've said this, God, like multiple times in different ones where, separately from this conversation, the general idea being, in all work in general, I've said before that I used to be the clock in, clock out developer, and I didn't like when people got in my way of writing code. And it took me a long time to realize that you have to enjoy what you're working on. You have to find a way to do it. And so for me, it was giving myself a challenge of making something the best it could be or outperforming expectations. And so I would try my best to make the best version of something I could. And that makes it fun for me. And that's something that I can, even in a horrible project that I don't like, I can still enjoy. Can I make this better than I think I can? So I do agree you need to find that if you're in that rut. But yeah, like I said, it's just such a shame. Like year after year, I see more people spending half their lives on working on things that I know from experience won't ever deliver. And like I don't know how to talk to those people going, I've seen you spend 2 years on this. I can see your future. It's 5 more. And I don't know what to say to you. And you've got all this enthusiasm and that's great, but you're going to eventually burn out and you're going to have nothing for it. And I'm just like...
Is this an intervention, Jason?
No, as I think about how long I've been working on mine.
It's like,
if it is, it's for 80% of the community.
Going now?
Barbarian 2.
The scary thing is, if it is an intervention, it's so broad it applies to 80 to 90% of people who are the kinds of people sitting here like listening to us. That's the point. That's the problem, is that like very few people, like I was lucky. I came from the side of it, going programming, into enterprise, then down to games, and then back into working at companies at enterprise in Unity. And so I'm seeing that cycle of stuff. And like I did the same thing. I faffed around on projects for ages and didn't make anything. And it's intoxicating. It's fun. It's easy to do. But that's the problem, is you just hit that point. You just have to stop and look at it and go, do you want to do this forever? Do you want to end up with nothing, or do you want to succeed at it? And you sometimes just have to learn how to do it properly, like learn to treat it like a business. And it's not like you're not losing your soul by doing that. You're not giving up on the dream. You're just being pragmatic that it takes actual discipline, not just motivation, to make something. And you just have to like get over that hump of relying on it being a fun project. You just have to decide, if I want to make this, what would the minimum viable thing be? How much work do I have to put in? Forget about my level of enthusiasm that day or the hopes and dreams of the project. If I intend to sell this, I need to know how much it costs and how I'm going to make it. And I like, of all the things missing in all of games, that's the one thing that's why Unity's pivoting. Because there's all of these people who are sitting on Unity, buying assets, and then not releasing games and not making them any money. If people were actually making projects and making money, Unity would be buying into them more because there would be money in them as community members. But there's a whole load of people who are just slot machines for assets on the asset store. And
Don't stop doing that.
Yeah, sorry, that's a good thing. Keep doing that. But it's just like for your own like sense of worth and getting stuff done, just like people need to pivot in that direction. There needs to be some hard talk, some interventions is what I'm saying.
I think to me it's very similar to writing or making music, and for a lot of people, instead of playing games, they make games. You know, and people love listening to music, but they're musicians and they play gigs on the side. They're never going to be, you know, the next Bruno Mars or whatever, but they still enjoy what they do. Some will go a little bit further and do weddings and small gigs, and they'll actually get paid a decent amount, not a huge amount, but they still have to have their day job. The reality is, I think a lot of people are just, you know, that it's fun, it's enjoyable, and there's a sense, just like, you know, musicians and writers who have a day job, that, oh yeah, it would be great if I could do that. But the reality is that most won't. And that's okay. We can't all be Flappy Bird developers. So I think in the end, there is some level of realism that has to come into play for people who are convinced that they're going to be the next big one. You know, it does take work to make it a full-time gig. That's obviously true. But for a lot of people, it's also okay because, you know, they don't want it to be a full-time gig necessarily. Even if they would like it, they would accept it. It's still, I don't want to do the work to get there, so I'm just going to keep having fun doing what I'm doing, making some cool projects. If I get lucky, great, I accept it, but, you know, most people aren't going to win the lottery.
And I'd be perfectly okay with that. Like, literally, I open Unity multiple times a day to mess around because I enjoy it. Like I said earlier, I literally made a thing today, which was a silly voice control thing because I was having fun. And I have no illusions that that's going to be a big product. I didn't cost-benefit analysis my time developing on that. It is, to me, I've said before, Unity is the ultimate video game. It is a game where you get to play with things and make it. I'm not disparaging that as an idea, but I go into it with a very clear understanding that this is playtime. I'm playing in my sandbox. This isn't going anywhere. And I have no problem with people doing that. But the amount of people where you hear the same lamenting time of, oh, it's not going anywhere. And I always, it's like, it's because you're not doing it. Like you're legitimately not doing the thing you're trying to do. You're just playing. And I have no problem if people want to play. You just have to be honest with yourself and say, am I playing or am I trying to turn this into a career? You just know the answer, even just to yourself, just so you can pivot in the right direction. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what he's actually saying is that he's a big gamer and he's trying to show off his skills.
Oh. Well, I'm going to start the giveaway real quick. So if anybody wanted to enter, you got a couple more seconds. Just choose a race and class, put an exclamation mark first, and the first place winner will get a JetBrains Rider license or $50 Cinti card, and second place will get whatever the first place doesn't pick. So you got about 2 minutes, and then I'll hit the button, and you'll see them just start fighting in the background. I'm not going to talk about it anymore, though. Just let them kind of go. But there were a couple people asking in chat who didn't know what it was, so I want to make sure they were able to get in. Interesting. So many questions in here. Some good discussions. You guys have other questions that you want me to pop up right now? Or can just go ahead and pick the one that I've got next in my list?
I'm kind of worried at this stage. I didn't realize I was going to be so spicy today, so I'm kind of afraid to answer more questions.
So
there was a question
about England, Jason?
No comment.
So there was a question very early on in the stream regarding Top Scout. Hey, I'm struggling to import Cinti characters to Blender, especially with modular fantasy characters. I tried uploading it to Mixamo so I can use their Blender add-on. Any thoughts? So I did have thoughts. Specifically, it usually doesn't matter what character you're trying to import to Blender. It's standard file formats, therefore they should be able to load in. If it straight up failed, then something has gone terribly wrong beyond the Blender version that you're using or the Unity asset itself. If you did get them to import in, it's likely a file loaded with a bunch of variants, and that variant, it usually goes that you have a rig, which is just an armature made out of bones, very simple stuff, and then there are a bunch of models rigged onto that rig. And these models will all overlap each other. And when you drop them into, say, a Unity project, into a hierarchy, you can start disabling the mesh renderers of all these objects so that you are only left with one. This is what most kits do because they only have one rig. And when you try to load that file into, say, Blender, you're loading all these mesh renderers. And when you do that, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a bit of memory. And if you try to upload it, it's still 50 models slapped into one, so it's going to be a big upload. What you do with animations from Mixamo is completely unrelated. They only care about your rig and what preview model you're using. They don't need 50 preview models, they need one. So what you can do is drag the file into Blender, keep only the one preview that you want, export that, then take that into Mixamo. And when you use Mixamo, it's probably still going to fail because Mixamo wants its own very specific rig. So unless Cinti decided to make the rig fully compatible with Mixamo's format, you're going to have to use a different rig. And that's going to mean that you have to re-rig all the models to that new rig. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can use the humanoid format, which is something that Cinti does support as far as I know. This is straight up in Unity, without Blender at all. You just take a Mixamo animation, import it, set up a humanoid avatar, and then you can use that animation file with any other humanoid avatar in Unity, and you don't have to deal with Blender at all. So there you go. There really isn't any magic that you can do here. There are some tools that will let you re-rig easier, but if the rig isn't Mixamo based to begin with, you're stuck with humanoids or any other plugins for Blender specifically, which are a very your mileage. They are very your mileage may vary from my own experience.
Yeah, I usually go with the humanoid setup for most stuff as my default, and then customize afterwards if needed. I couldn't find that question in the chat history, though. I think it got scrolled past before I pinned it. Couldn't pop it up. Anybody else got thoughts on that one? All right, then can somebody tell me? Go ahead.
I do have one extra thought, though. So retargeting from one rig to another is a huge topic. I just wanted to bring that up. I've been digging around a lot for the best approach to do that. I've written my own scripts. I've tried to deal with Unity's humanoids because they have a problem where they don't have weapon bones, specifically a rig portion for your weapon, so that if you hold a gun like this or whatever have you, it's aligned with how your grip is, not how your hand is. This is something you can't do with humanoids, and it freaking sucks because a lot of weapons have really cool animations and you can't use any of them because of this. So I have been looking into alternate solutions. Right now my steering is heading into Houdini, which I recommend everybody should try and learn, because I think a big part of the problem we talked about earlier, where compute power is being put to the equation of making a lot of content. Well, Houdini, with its non-destructive workflow where you can make a bunch of changes really, really quickly, is incredibly useful to make large amounts of content very, very quickly. Specifically, Unity has its own integration for Houdini these days. You can use a lot of the features of Houdini Engine to, say, make dynamic bridges, dynamic hills, trees, whatever have you. sets of barrels. There's a whole tutorial on the official Unity Technologies page for it too. I think it's very worthwhile to look at. There are really strong tools there, and it can really boost your workflow if you manage to figure out how to use it.
I played with it a little bit, but I just get lost. So too many other things to try to keep in my head. Now, I want to know if you guys have used this at all. This question popped up, and I had to Google it because I couldn't remember what Unity Atoms was. Have any of you guys used the Unity Atoms library, and do you know anything about it to be able to talk about it?
I had no idea this existed until you just mentioned it.
It's just a more codified version of the ye old Ryan Hipple principle of scriptable object architecture. It's like a transformer. It always comes back in a new form. It's fine. Like I say this a lot. Like, these are all tools. They're things to solve problems. What problem are you solving? Like, I get so many questions going, should I use MVVM for this? Or should I use inversion of control or dependency injection frameworks? Or which library or framework should I use? What are you making? Like, you don't just, like, you know, if you're going to hang a painting in your house, it's like, well, I'm going to need power tools. Like, no, but why would you buy a whole suite of power tools for something like, don't use things you don't need? Like,
no, me.
Yeah,
I bought this giant saw that I bought to saw this little tiny piece of metal, and then I watched a video on how to use it, and somebody was doing a little hacksaw, and I was like,
yeah, right. Like, so it's very easy to fall into this trap. If it's got library or framework or system in the name, it's probably built for something that you probably aren't there yet. It's like, I was having this discussion with someone in my Discord yesterday. It's like, if you need health, make a variable called health. If you need a player, make a class called player. You don't need to make a int variable and a scriptable object, player, event, death. Who cares? Just write the code you need. And architecture happens. Architecture is what happens when enough stuff stacks together and it's like, oh, this has a shape now. Maybe I can move it out to something else. Don't start by putting a whole load of stuff in and then trying to put your game into the architecture that's there. Make the thing you're trying to make. And at some point, once you start doing this enough, you'll realize you keep making yourself some version of a event bus or something. And you'll be like, oh, maybe I'll find one online that does it for me, that's more tested or better than the one I was doing. Once you've proven that it works and it's something that's part of your workflow, don't just pick one up off the shelf, hack it in, and hope it fits what you're doing. So in general, there's nothing wrong with any of these frameworks. They're probably well built and serve the purpose of the person who made them for the thing they were doing, not the thing you're doing. Make the thing you need for what you're doing.
I completely agree. I did a video earlier this week talking about starter kits and using those as kind of a starting point too, and doing it in the situation of needing, like, that's the actual thing that you're trying to build. In my case, I was like trying to build a little racing game. I don't know if you can see it here. There's a little racing wheel here. I wanted to fuck around with the racing wheel, drive around in Unity and build a little racing game, but I didn't want to go through all of the core fundamental stuff, so I dropped that in. I wouldn't just go grab a racing kit and like try to design a game off of it though, if I didn't have if I wasn't already trying to build a racing game though. I'm not going to pull in that kit. I guess not the greatest analogy, but somewhat similar and relevant. I'm going to shut up. You all right? What were you going to say?
No, I just wanted to say that if you do want to start using common solutions or solutions from other people, put them into a small isolated project first, understand what they do for you, and then consider if they do what you need. Because knowing your requirements is very important to choosing your solutions. The reason programming patterns exist is that they're common solutions to known problems. If you don't know what your problems are, you don't need any solution. Or you need to better understand your problem first. So do that. Do not just start importing things you don't understand in. You're just going to give yourself a quagmire, make it all slow and very difficult to understand for yourself, and your project's going to come to a halt. Understand first, then figure out what is a known solution for it that you are comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with any, look for new ones. Once you assess you found one that fits your needs, use that one. Now, in terms of using scriptable objects for relaying information across your project, I am basically against this kind of approach for multiple reasons. It never fits the requirements I have. I have never found a way to make it work to a degree that won't slow me down compared to speed me up.
The one case I like is when I want to transfer. Well, for me, it's the one case is if I've got multiple scenes in a networked application and I just want to quickly dump state between the two scenes without worrying about stuff. Sometimes I'll use an intermediary scriptable object for that kind of stuff. But yeah, in most cases, I agree. I especially personally really hate the prevalence of this like variable int reference, float reference, all of this stuff. It turns every number into a class, a scriptable object, a reference, manage data, and it's like, cool, because now it's a cool feature. You're going to do it for everything. So now a script, which could have been health, max health, if health less than max health, do whatever. It's now int reference dot evoke something something that is like where like you're 80 steps removed from what you're actually doing at this stage. And like the number one thing for me is I look at code and go, does this make me feel ill? Do I enjoy using my code? And whenever I open it and I go, oh God, it's like all of these words and things that don't mean anything. They're just, it makes me uncomfortable. I look at it and go, I don't want to work in this class. What would I wish it said? I wish it said if health low, player dead. That's what I wish it said, not thing that evoke incident. So I try to write the code that I wish it was and then make that make sense.
I do want to point out one other aspect, which is very situational, but as you said, managed objects. A lot of people don't understand that this has a cost. And it's not just a cost of complexity or a cost of making the assets taking time. It's the cost of performance. And depending on the games you make, invoking a bazillion object hopping between this reference to that reference to this reference to this reference, you're also losing the ability to just debug your application in general because you're starting to make logic between objects as opposed to just logic in one place using objects. But you're also just paying the cost of moving around in memory. And depending on the device, this cost in time can be pretty significant. One other thing is these assets do not scale. You make an asset, it's working for the one thing that you made it for and nothing else. If I made a game and I had a player health that I use for when the player takes damage, this number goes down, and when that number updates, change the UI, that works well for single player. If I want to make a second character in multiplayer, the asset is useless. This asset can no longer declare, I am health for this one player, I am health for player. You cannot spawn multiple players using this same asset. It lost all of its value just because you needed a second one of it. And this is where the entire thing falls apart, because the content I tend to want to make scales. I want to be able to spawn 10,000 of any prefab that I make. I'm never making singleton prefabs. That's it. No magic here.
You're going through it. Yeah,
there was one question I think we can probably answer, which is it difficult to migrate from game objects to ECS? Where was this?
Oh, I saw that one. I was curious if you'd be interested in that. I would say it's not easy, but what do you think, Troy? You've been digging into it a lot more than all of us have.
Okay, so a bit of a rant. It's actually incredibly simple to migrate. Problem being, things are different now. You have to understand what you're doing. If you understand what you're doing, it's not difficult at all. If you don't understand what you're doing, it's going to help you try to figure out what to do, but you're still going to be missing some terminology. So,
real quickly, when we talk about migrating, are you talking about taking an existing project that's already in development and switching it over, or starting a brand new project?
Both, because you can do it. Both because you can do it iteratively. You can switch just some parts to ECS. You don't have to do it for everything. In regards to how different they are, very code-wise, but the end result code is incredibly similarly simple. I could probably make, just as an example, a rotating cube with about the same amount of lines of code for both things, between mono behaviors and ECS. If we're just talking about that, if we're talking about player taking damage when they touch something, probably also the same amount of code. It's just going to look different, it's going to work different, and there are going to be concepts that you have to understand in order for it to not be annoying to work with. Did you want to say something?
Not too difficult, but there's still a lot of things that aren't quite supported yet, right? It's not like a full transition where you can just do. I thought there were a couple systems that are still kind of in the works.
Okay, so that's a more nuanced topic than a lot of people realize, because Unity is basically gone and said we are embracing working with mono behaviors in a hybrid manner. And as a result, you can basically make any system you're making with ECS just use mono behavior stuff. It's going to be slower because you don't get to utilize the full benefit of ECS, but it does work. I have a project where I have a character, and that character is converted to an entity, but it still has a reference to a particle system on its prefab, and whenever I spawn it, that prefab spawns the particle system. It exists in the ether of Unity, and if I want to, I have an ECS system that says particle system.play, and that still works exactly as I designed it, just like mono behavior. I'm calling the literal mono behavior class of particle system from an ECS code, and there's no special boilerplate. I am literally using it like any ECS thing. So there really isn't a problem there. It's just that the main problem that people think ECS limits you to working with just ECS stuff, it's not about ECS, it's about jobs. When you use a job, it's letting you work in parallel over multiple threads, but Unity mono behavior code has to run from the main one. And you can make a job and call run on it, which will just let it run on the main thread alone with no threading. And that will work perfectly fine.
So it seems like it's not too difficult. I actually probably should get in there and
yeah, I could probably make something like incredibly simple for you to just look at and understand immediately what's going on.
I need to dive in there. So, oh, Jason, that's it. Twitch comments they do show up in chat, but we very rarely get any. If anybody's watching in Twitch, say hello and chat, and we'll say hi back. So there are a couple questions. This one popped up earlier, and I kind of missed it, but they're asking about whether they should revamp their older projects when applying for new positions. I don't know that that's necessarily going to have as much value as just doing something new, or maybe just working on the portfolio and making that better instead of going through an update. Nobody's really going to care that you updated old projects, I guess.
Yeah, the one thing here is that when you are trying to apply for any position, you're trying to put the best version of yourself up. And your old code is baggage at this point. If you know how to do things better, there's no point in showing the worse. So if you can just start with a clean slate with just good stuff, that's going to be way better than taking a project, converting 90% of it to a better state, and then letting somebody look at it and say, what's that 10% that's actually stinking? Yeah. You don't want to give anybody really that option.
Is a lot better than a lot of okay stuff. Just a tiny bit of really good, I think.
Yeah, and I would take it one step further, and I face this when I look for artists to work with, especially animators are the big one. If you're going to show somebody your work as part of your portfolio to get a job, make sure you show them what they want to see. So if you're applying for somebody that makes RPG fantasy games and your portfolio is full of 2D side scrollers in space, they're going to look at that and be like, well, this person's not for us. So figure out what they want to see. In my experience, like, if you know I'm hiring an animator, I'm looking for an animator, and you get a sense of what I've created already, show me that. Show me how you're going to create stuff for me. And you know, I mean, you know, as an example, this is a completely different industry, but a friend of mine once got a job as a copy editor. And to get this job, she, before the interview, went to their website and copy edited their website. It was a Russian company that was based in the US. And so they had a fair amount of issues that they could fix. She copy edited it, brought it to the interview and said, I did this. And they said, you're hired. That was it. Like, that was the interview, because she basically said that I will do exactly what you need me to do. So I think
I already did it.
Yes, and you already did it. Now you just need to pay me. For your old projects, figure out which ones apply to the new job that you're looking for. Update those so that they're not hideous in case they're hideous, and make it clear that you are doing what they are hiring for.
Yeah, you basically said everything I was going to say. I was going to say, literally, if you're going to apply to anybody, if you this goes back to what I was saying before about things like showcases on Discord channels or Twitter. Like, look at people posting things and what they're talking about, and then kind of go, can I add something to that project? And oftentimes you can just go and learn it and then reach out to them and say, I know how to do this. Do you need that for your project? Like, if you're good at art, then learning how to do the art for what they need is probably not going to be that big of a deal. Likewise, if you've done AI in some projects, but you've never done it for the kinds of thing they're doing, do some quick research. Find out how to do the kinds of things you're seeing in their particular advertisements or GIFs or whatever, and target them directly. Like, you can't get simpler than, if someone wants to hire, if you want to get hired, be hireable. Do exactly the thing that they need, hands down.
Make it easy. Everybody wants the easy button.
That's why I said, like, to me, the biggest trick in the world is to simply, like I said, just sneakily watch people work on projects and go, oh, they're doing this, but they keep complaining about the UI. They don't like working on the UI. Or that person keeps doing this, but they're having lots of issues with raycasts. I'll go and make a little raycast script. I'll say, hey, I noticed you're working on that thing. I just put a script together, see if you want to use it, enjoy. And that's how you build goodwill. People are like, oh yeah, that guy knows how to help me and stuff. And then that's how you get work. You just literally, people see you as a problem solver that is, paying attention. That's all you have to do.
Okay, the final part of the battle is about to end right now. I'm realizing what's going on with the name tags too. They're looking at different cameras. The Mixcast software.
Well, I was wondering why, because they'd walk forward and the camera would, the name would do a spin. I was like, what the hell is going on?
I was under the impression that it's all just spinning compared to the center of the grid.
No, I think they're looking at cameras based on which one's closest to them. And I think there's 4 cameras from the Mixcast thing in there, and it's pointing towards the closest. So when they get to a certain point, they switch and start pointing in different directions. I was trying to figure out what was going on there, but I think it's just my code that's finding the cameras. It used to just look for the main camera, and now I think it finds the closest one. So yeah, congrats, Corey, for winning, and send me an email. Also, whoever won second place, if you saw yourself, shoot me an email. Otherwise, I'll have to rewind through, and I'll send you the prize. JetBrains Rider license or a Cinti gift card for the winners. Congrats, and I'm going to disappear that window or shrink it down at least. And keep my holograms up there in the background. So let's see. You guys want to move on to more questions? You got any other thoughts on the getting a job? All right, let's move on to that one. Let's find. How long would it take a pro team to develop, just the programming side only, a game like Hearthstone? Who wants to dive in on this? Like, so I guess let's say you're taking it from scratch and you're not using the starter kits that just already have the key stuff done. So you're doing it all from scratch on your own. What do you guys think to get the core part of Hearthstone up and running?
So the term pro team is a bit loaded here because there's a lot of nuances to what you actually need to build a Hearthstone. But let's just run through some of the requirements. We know it's a card-based game. We know that cards have a lot of data around them: damage, health, sprite, unique mechanics. These unique mechanics have a lot of twists to them, conditions, things that applied in different orders, making choices in the middle of one of these executing. You know that there is a deck composed of the cards. You know that there are places to place the cards. So there is a board of sorts. There are different places the cards can go, target, and that all of this information, different things on the board, is replicated on somebody else's machine. You know that be able to keep a history of the cards, and you know that you want to be able to have a way to get new cards. Usually, you want to also have a save system of sorts that exists somewhere on a central server that says this account has this many cards. And you also want to have scripted events. There's a campaign, if I recall. So that's an AI that knows how to play a card game based on the rules that keep changing, and that it can invoke events completely unrelated to the card game itself, but rather to the AI state, whatever is happening within this card match. And you also want to have snap animations and a lot of other things. Now, I'm bringing up the animations, even though you said programming only, because there are a lot of things that are dynamic, and an animator cannot do it for you without some programming involved. So you need somebody that is able to understand that. And
like 2 or 3 weeks?
No. Each one of these can be its own rabbit hole. How many mechanics do you need? Can I make just a card system where I'm just bringing a card up and dropping it down? I did that in 3 hours in Unity with a lot of really snappy animations, just like Slay the Spire. But there was no functionality behind the card. I just had an ability to know this card is being picked up. This card is dragging itself around where the pointer is. And when I'm dropping it, if there's something beneath the card, it's applying the card to that point, or rejecting it and bringing it back to its rest position. All of these things have a lot of nuances to them. So depending on how much of this you need, you're looking, I think, at 2 months of development. Just to make something that you can actually product ship if you just had someone to do animations and textures on the side. For a minimal game with all the rules that I can remember from Hearthstone release, at least.
It's bare bones.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's bare bones released product.
Yeah,
there's a difference, not a prototype. Card games have this benefit that once you have a system for cards going, it's just a case for balancing, which is its own little hellhole. But
well, I think the hard part on card games is getting that rule engine
yeah.
right and getting that part down. The networking and the card storage and stuff, if you've done it before in other games, it's not too complicated, and it's easier than a lot of other game types. But
it's all the consistent. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like once you're persisting a deck, you are persisting a deck. It's not like having to persist the difference between, raycasts and projectiles and all the other different things that all have to be handled completely differently in different cases. If you're storing data and persisting it, you've already done the persisting. You can just scale up the amount of information you're sending. Plus, it's event driven. Event driven is infinitely easier in every scenario over loop driven.
Yeah, for people who don't know a lot about networking, there's also this concept called lockstep, where you don't have to sync the entire state of the game board and the state of every card. What you can do is you can have a game starting off with you knowing the exact 2 decks and some random number generator that is synced up, and the only thing you'll be transferring henceforth is player inputs, which means everybody is simulating the exact same steps. Now, are these inputs complicated? That's a different question. You have to be able to point at every single thing on the board at any given point in time and say, this is the input action I've taken. Which
in a card game, they're pretty simple, because it's like, dude, this card does this action. Usually it's like moves to this spot or gets activated, or uses an ability it has or something.
Yeah, you can usually persist like every available target on the deck, board, whatever, and just say this target to that target, this action, send it.
Yeah. So they're saying some people think 2 months seems a low. I'd say 2 months is like optimistic and ideal with a good team that knows what they're doing and isn't making mistakes. Yeah, it's a pro team, and that's a pro team, and it's assuming that they've done similar things before and they're not, researching and doing it for the first time. I think that's always the case. When I think of a pro team on something, I think like they've done this before. They've made these kinds of games. They already have an outline in their head of what it looks like, and they're not going around watching videos and Googling and researching how to do all of the basic stuff, right? And you're at that pro team level. And that's what you should be if it's a pro team.
If our shared friend Chris was here, he's a big fan of something called the no estimates movement, because it is a self-fulfilling prophecy of failure to give a number. Because the truth is, if you knew the answer, you would just do it. The whole point of an estimate is you don't know the answer. And so all you're doing is signing your own death warrant. So the short answer is, how long will it take? It'll take as long as it takes. And that's not to say that you can't do estimates. You can't do estimates from nothing. You can't manufacture numbers out of thin air. That's why in scaled companies, there's the concept of a burn down rate, or there's generally having some kind of Gantt chart. And what that means is you don't make random guesses. You do 2 weeks. You estimate how much you'll get done in 2 weeks. You evaluate how close you were to your guesses. You reevaluate. You now, based on how well or bad you did, you plan 2 weeks. You do it again, and you keep doing that. And over time, you'll start to understand how well you are doing at estimating your time. As for how long it would take, do you have a dedicated parallel team making art? Do you have someone on staff whose sole job is to manage the balancing side of it? Are you running servers to automate the balancing side of it? All of this is time that could be spent or not spent. Are you trying to prove the concept by having a deck of 5 cards and getting that to work? Or do you have an existing set of rule engines from an existing project, and the hard part's actually in the production of all of the resources and assets? It's such a, there's too many things for that.
Variables.
I wouldn't even pretend to give an estimate. My first guess would be to ship a good game like that would be 3 years. But that's because I would be going from, you've never made this game before, and you're going through all of that, the learning, the building, the processes, and whatever. Because even saying a experienced team, is it an experienced team making those kinds of games? Or is it an experienced team with an existing library of tools or utilities? Or you could have a really experienced team, but they don't have anybody who's ever done balancing of card games. So they could blaze through the game and make it done in 2 months. But then suddenly everything slows to a crawl, and they spend a year tweaking and nudging because the game just doesn't work until they figure out those numbers. So I wouldn't, if someone asked me that as a client, I would say, come back to me in 2 weeks and I'll give you a slightly longer estimate, and we'll keep doing that for as long as we can.
Just to completely agree here, what Jason said is perfectly correct. The only reason I'm able to give any sort of estimate here at all is based on past experiences, because I've done most of the systems that I mentioned that are included in a game like Hearthstone out of curiosity. And I've seen other people try to approach it. And from what I remember, this is my estimate had I been given a team. Also, we didn't address what is a team's size at all. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm always right here, because the team could be 1,000 men. But I didn't mean it as 1,000 men. To be very specific here, you don't need that many developers for the system involved if you're just trying to make a minimal implementation. Because if you want persistence for accounts, there's already plenty of services for it. It's just a matter of how you store cards and whether you want to support some sort of anti-cheating for it, which is its own little hellhole. We didn't bring that up at all. To just do card selections, that's a simple UI in Unity. You can do that really quickly. To store that as deck building, if a card has an int ID, you're basically done. It's literally a list of cards. Save that list of cards, send it off to whatever service. That's true. If you're trying to make a game board, that's literally just a placeable portion script, and then dropping 40 of them over a single scene. Done. If you're trying to make a deck of cards that present that, you make a card game object. You just make something that says, this is a stack of cards, drop that all in, done. It's like the amount of things that seem complicated, if you break them down to their smallest portions, they're very simple to make, and you can make any single piece of these relatively simply, depending on how it's described, within 5 minutes. And it's just the accumulation of all these 5 minutes, and then the complexities taking longer than that. And that's the parts where you do actually need some past experience in knowing how long it would take, which is the rule engine in this case. This is like the most complicated part. And also Jason Story on his Discord server has very good comments about people asking him how to make rule engines. Yeah. But that's going to be where most of your time gets spent. That and just choosing whatever working solution you use for the transport more than anything.
Well, my answer comes from a slightly different place, which is, again, I was the developer in the trenches, and that's how people see themselves as a programmer. You see yourself as in a nice little box, requirements come in, you estimate how long it'll take to do the requirement, you do it, and you ship the result out the other end. And that's like saying, I can make a ham sandwich in about 30 seconds. If I have everything here, I can just make a sandwich. And you said, how long will it take me to scale my business and start selling 1,000 sandwiches a week on whatever? Oh, well, if it takes 30 seconds per sandwich, and I can make 1,000 sandwiches. No, that has nothing to do with what the question you're actually asking is. It is not about scaling how long it takes per system, scaled by time, by whatever. That is never where your time is going to go. The things that kill a company is communication. It is the actual requirement changes. It's the fact that you don't even understand your consumers. It's the fact that the actual goal and projects are going to change. So to me, those 100% everything you said is right, in that the actual systems for a card game are kind of disgustingly simple. Realistically, you could do a bit of research, buy some assets, and you could actually have a fully functional rule engine that does what you need in a very, very short amount of time. But that's nothing to do with, like, when you say a professional team to make a game, you're not really saying a professional team to have made the ability to play cards. You are saying to make a game. And a game doesn't count as a game until it is available for purchase, which means it has to have been developed and built and play tested and all of that stuff, put on storefronts, marketed, scaled, like responding to user feedback. Your time goes. So yeah, if you're asking how long it takes to make it, that's like how long does it take to make a sandwich? That's not the same question as how long does it take to start a sandwich making company. They are completely different concepts altogether. If you're doing a game jam and you want to do a really small card game, you could bang that out pretty quickly. But we are not talking about that. When you talk about professional teams, you're talking about professional projects, you're talking about big systems money and the stuff that goes with it. And
the ability to not die within 1 week.
Yes, like to actually sustain the costs that you're going to incur as you go through it. And one of the comments was to say that bigger teams aren't necessarily faster. In fact, it's almost the exact opposite. The bigger a team gets, the more that people underestimate the communication cost scaling. 2 people in a room talking are not going to lose a lot of time, but 4 people in a room talking are going to lose a bit of time. 2 people in one room and 2 people in a different room are going to have to wait for emails to pass, conversations, time for meetings. If they're in different time zones, they're going to have to wait for the crosstalk. People will be held up by each other in development. If you've got a larger team, every decision starts to build on these little micro costs. And something that could take 20 minutes to do with 2 people talking in a room might take a week to get everybody on board, to get all the pieces in place and start developing. So things will scale and actually take more time the more people that are on it. That's why the prevailing wisdom at large teams is something called surgical teams. It's where you try to actually make your big company into a series of small companies. You start splitting your team up into highly focused teams of someone who's a decision maker, someone who does the art and development. And what you do is you have everybody focus on one thing and you give them a unit. And then you have the units have group meetings, split up, develop things, and then they're really efficient because they're working together. They don't have any third-party things to deal with. And then you coalesce, grab them together, and scale it up beyond that point. So the biggest cost in any enterprise of development is communication and the way that starts to scale and bloat. The other example is if you hire more people, you're like, oh, I'll get another person. It'll be twice as fast. when that person's on your team, you're suddenly less than half productive because 1, you're not doing your job. 2, you're helping them. So now you're not only not doing your job, they're not doing their job because you're helping and training them. And so now you've lost the productivity you did have, and you're not gaining productivity from the new person. And so how long will it take for them to catch up? That could be a very long time. So as a general rule, adding people to a project slows it down and makes it take more time. That's why usually you want to have people work on tangential things, and why whenever I'm hired into a company, I will almost always say, give me a feature or a slice. I want to hear what you want to make. I will cut a slice out. I will tell you the contract that we will agree on. I will build a thing and deliver it to you. You can work in parallel. I can work on my thing, and we can collaborate and work on it together. That way, I'm not getting, quite frankly, caught in their business politics that ends up eating my time and wasting everyone else's. So it's this sort of surgical concept is how you fix some of those problems. But yeah, at scale, this stuff gets really complicated. So it's not an easy answer.
Yeah. Also, in regards to just if you take interest in rule engines, card games, and all that, here is a very specific attempt at recreating Hearthstone, kind of, done in Unity with a project that you can download by the Liquid Fire blog here. It goes through everything, very nuanced, has pretty good setup, and I think it has like 10 chapters where he keeps going through different systems and how to implement them. I don't recall where the exact main page is, but I had this bookmarked, so it's something that I do recommend people interested in card games go look at. Very good dive into what a rule engine is and what it isn't.
Thanks. I just linked it in chat too. We'll put it in the description so everybody can grab it and go check it out. It looks pretty interesting.
And by the way, just on the rule engine thing, here's a little pro tip for you. You've either done this already or you will do it in your programming career. And I'm giving you this bit of advice as a warning to catch yourself before you waste too much time. Rule engines are fun, they're technical, and they feel really cool. And it feels like you're moving a step above a programming language and making some cool, badass system that does a lot of automation that'll save you time in the long run. It never does. You are building a system to build a system that has solving problems you don't have. If you're using a rule engine inside of a game, that's different. But if you find yourself building a really fancy editor tool that's specifically like if statements and loops and nonsense inside of your thing that you're effectively rebuilding a visual scripting language, you're wasting your time and you're not actually solving any problems. It feels productive, it looks cool, and you're very proud to show it off to developers. But the truth is, if someone brought you one of those, would you use it? And you know you wouldn't. Because it's like, why would I use this complicated thing they just gave me with all of these bells and whistles when I can just write the code? So you think you're building something cool and modular and easy for other people to use. You never are. You're building a fun toy that's entertaining to build, but solves nobody's problems. So if you're like me, you probably made 5 or 6 of these in your life. But the truth is, don't waste your time making things to make things. Make the thing you need. And over time, you will organically start to find things that you'd like to reuse. But if you try to pre-estimate that and build it in advance, you will not only make something useless, you'll be really bummed out when you proudly show it to people and they don't care. And it's going to be very demoralizing.
Yeah, don't make it in advance, make it over time. If you see that you're starting to say, just as an example, you make a card game, there's a card, it deals damage. Now there's a card that wants to multiply the damage this card deals for one time. How do you do that? Make the code for it the first time, see if there's anything that you can extract or change or make it cleaner, because you might want other things after. Do that. If you don't want to do that, fine. Wait until you have another requirement. Now there's a card that wants to, say, add free damage. How do you discern between adding free damage or doubling the damage? Make something for it. Figure out if there's a pattern that starts repeating. Make something for that. And over time, you might end up with a rule engine or a different implementation that works for you.
Well, I want to take these 2 last questions. This first one I wanted to answer real quickly was about hackathons, because I've done this myself. They're doing a company hackathon and they want some tips on making an MVP in 3 days without overscoping so that they don't end up with basically an incomplete thing at the end of the hackathon. I've had that happen multiple times where it kind of like overscoped and overplanned, or decided to do a hackathon on something where I was going to need to do a lot of research. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that if I'm going to do a hackathon project, I want the core of the the project to be kind of up and working and playable within like maybe the first 6 to 8 hours. Like I try to avoid the projects where I'm going to need to do a bunch of setup and preparation and stuff to get it going before I know whether or not the game's actually going to be, or the project is actually going to work and be interesting. And I try to really like get them down to getting that core gameplay loop knocked out right away. And if I can't do it in that time, then I switch to a different game idea instead, because it sucks when you're going through a hackathon and you just never finish the thing. Do you guys have other thoughts on this though?
I usually tend to not join any short jam projects. I do make my own take on them, but I don't limit myself on time, because when I try to do a jam, it's usually to learn something new. And if I decide that I want to learn something new, I'm going to take my time to learn that thing specifically.
This looks like a company one, though, like probably going through and experimenting with ideas that they've been running through their head for a while and presenting them as possible options for the company. That was my guess, at least, when I saw company hackathon, because that's what they usually end up in.
Yeah, but if you're trying to prove something that you already know will work, then there's not much point in a hackathon. It's more like fast building something, right?
But I think it's more proving
you
it
can
to the
do
rest
that.
of the team that it's
Yeah.
actually an interesting idea and worth looking into more. And
Yeah, but
it's also like a leisure thing for the teams, right? It's like they're
but I'm trying to say that if you're trying to prove something that you know will already work, then you're not overscoping yourself. You know exactly what's in the scope already.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you're saying there's something to overscope, it means that you're building something new that you don't know exactly what value it will provide. So, what are you trying to have here? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is particularly the topic that's come up in the book I'm currently reading, the lean startup stuff, which is really interesting. And the basic answer is to go back to that phrase, validated learning. The way I'd phrase it is, if you're about to go on a hill walk, you can look at the existing map and you can try to plan the path you're going to take, and you can spend half a day doing that and then go on your walk. And then every time you stop and you hit a rock, you're going to be like, okay, I have to reevaluate and pivot. The truth of the matter is, if you're in a small time loop, in order, the most important thing you can do is always be delivering. So step one, if you ever find yourself working for an hour and then the project is in a broken state afterwards, you fucked up. Your project should never be in a state where you're actively in like, hang on, I can't make a build, I have to fix it first. So if you can get away with it in real big projects, but if you're doing something that's iterative and cycled, what you want to do is say, it does this, I want it to do this, I will push as far as I can get away with and make a push, commit, and you don't have to do the build, but you should be able to build. If someone ever said pencils down right now, you should be able to press play and you'll have a version of the project with a set number of features. And your goal is to push the boundary. And then like Jason was saying, you want to have what does it take to be a game? Well, I have to have a character moving. Okay, what next? Well, now I have to be able to pick up things. Okay, now I can pick up things, now I have to open doors. That's it. That is the game. It is done. It is a functional thing. You want that done in like the shortest time possible that you can play the game. Because you can sit and brainstorm 50 ideas, but the truth of the matter is half those ideas will go out the window because they're either too complex or they don't fit the end result or the project has changed. But what you'll end up having is 50% more ideas once you're looking at it going, oh, wouldn't it be cool if X, Y, and Z? And those are the more important ideas because they are actively building on what's there. They're not hypotheticals that have no grounding. They are, I'm building this thing, I stop, I look at the state of the world and go, okay, it does this. It would be cool if it did this and cool if it did this. That might take 2 hours. That might take an hour. What do we think? Okay, we'll do this one next. So be reactive, work in small steps, and always be producing something that builds onto the next thing. That's the best way to do it.
All right, well, I want to wrap this real quick with the final question of, is there a way to join? This is for Jason Story's Discord. Jason's Discord. So you want to tell them all how to join it? There's a link in the description.
Yeah, sure. I don't like having to deal with bots in my Discord, so mine's private. So you basically, any donation on the Ko-fi, $4 or $5, whatever it is for the minimum amount, will get you access. And so you'll get a message and there'll be a link you can click, and make sure you connect to the correct Discord. It happens 40% of the time. Somebody will connect the wrong Discord and I have to try and fix it manually. Then the roles and stuff mess up. So just be careful with that. But yeah, you'll get access to the Discord. You'll be assigned your roles and you can join then. But it's
So
yeah,
the
it's
$1 million donation, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's through the Ko-fi. That's my thing.
So yeah, the link's down in the description below. Make sure you go join that. It's very, very interesting. I also wanted to share Dave's video again. I'll drop the link in the chat. Just released. If you want to go watch this, I'm actually going to watch this because I think there's some stuff in here that I didn't know about, and it's going to be pretty interesting. So I'm going to go check that out. And I wanted to briefly mention Andrew's hair pack again, which is pretty cool. Hair and beards. Andrew, any final words on hair and beards?
They're really neat. Even though I shaved yesterday, but
Just to
There was a
slap that
50%
on.
chance. 50% chance I was going to shave before today. I was like just so close, nearly did.
yeah,
And now we just got to try to recreate these beards on here.
yeah.
I need to get this big,
get your braiding going.
braided one. I'm sure my wife would love that.
Now
And then
pull that
also
into a dots project and have a system that makes rainbow hair coloring.
There we go. I also just wanted to mention the Blink sale too. Don't forget to check that out. Grab the bundle. I grabbed the bundle. I grab every Unity bundle to be honest, though, because I tend to get a good deal and I like getting good deals. But it's linked down in the description as well, so you can check that out. And the winners from the giveaway, make sure to email me. I'll send you over some prizes hopefully today. And everybody else, make sure that you hit like, subscribe, share the stream, go drop it out, send it to all your friends. Drop a comment in afterwards, and we will see you again next Sunday, or maybe sooner if you subscribe. All right, you guys want to say bye?
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good luck.